Our agenda will start with a review of taking you back to last year, a year ago, May 2nd, when we held a board retreat to talk about and discuss our 15-step discipline plan, the current status. I want to spotlight some of our leaders that have embraced the current plan, and also just to recognize that our building principals are here in the audience tonight because this was a district-wide initiative as it relates to positive behavior intervention supports. Then to inform you on discussions that started during the winter months with our teachers and our leaders around Superintendent Solutions. I want to spotlight some of our teachers to share their experiences, and then highlights from the feedback that we received during Superintendent Solutions, and then a forecast on future work. And also then to spotlight some additional teachers around that future work. So let's just review and go back to, like I said, May of 2023. There were several 15 steps. There were several steps that we said we wanted to accomplish. And so here is a status of those various steps. Around before the end of the school year, we wanted to host a 1-hour professional learning on discipline expectations for the 23-24 school year. That was completed in May of 23. Moving on, differentiated PBIS training that was provided as part of choice programs, and that was conducted on August the 10th in 2023. And then throughout the summer, our executive directors met with our building level principals and our division teams, and to provide training around consistent sequence of progressive discipline. So we look at some of the accomplishments. We were part of our issue in the past, and it continues to be, I want to make sure I point out along the way, is around common language and practices. And those are some things that we've heard that we need to continue to calibrate around, making sure that our practices are consistent across the district. Appropriate communication to all of our stakeholders, discipline narrative composition, bullying and harassment, and looking at due process, and also special education in 504. Also ensuring that every student and parent received a copy of our SPS Student Handbook and Code of Conduct at the beginning of the year. You'll note that over 20,000 families returned that signed signature page out of 24,500 students. Other goals that were accomplished, in addition to an ISS room at our K-8 and middle schools, was adding a focus room staffed by behavior interventionists, and all those staff were certified, and that's at our K-8 and middle schools. Also, every elementary campus having a focus room or a designated place. If you recall, I shared with you last May, some of our smaller elementary campuses do not have a dedicated space, or they're sharing the space. And so that is consistent with a number of our campuses just based on space. And then ensuring that, like I said, students had access to those focus rooms. Additionally, we wanted to train our substitutes. We heard a lot, and you know, on any given day, we can have a number of substitutes across our district. Over 185 substitutes were trained during the course of the 23-24 school year on positive behavior interventions. This was a collaboration with PenMac, and we started that training actually last August and provided it quarterly throughout the course of the school year as new additional substitutes came on board. Also, key performance indicators. All of our schools, of course, create a building school improvement plan, and we collect that quarterly data and review that. Our executive directors review that with our building leaders throughout the course of the school year. Also, all of our sites had a Big 5 discipline data team where they reviewed location, time of day, types of incidents, and then they worked on plans to address that. Also, building discipline reports were reviewed quarterly with our principals in 6-week cycles. That was part of that calibration to review and to look at progressive discipline. Also, school behavior safety audits. Our safety audit has been completed. Board members, you'll hear more about that throughout the course of the month of May, where we will discuss those safety audits. Also, re-entry meetings were established where when students were suspended out of school, they were required to participate in a re-entry meeting. That is still an area of needed growth for us across the district to ensure that that's happening on every campus and happening in a more formalized process. Also, additional professional learning money was set aside for PBIS planning and implementation. We provided training to our building leaders and counselors. Dr. John Hannigan provided training around positive behavior supports and also multi-tiered supports for behavior. Alternative placement opportunities were afforded across the district this past school year and on our middle school campuses, and you'll see those campuses highlighted: Carver, Pipkin, and Westport. We had impact classrooms at those 4 middle schools. We served over 39 students at those campuses this year and still continue to serve students. And so this was an option for students to go into an impact room as opposed to being reassigned to our alternative school, trying to keep them on their campus, but also keeping them separated to address their behavior issues and concerns throughout the course of the school year. Also, academic behavior support program, alternative placements for students with disabilities, ages 5 through 14, who experience significant behavior challenges. And then we continue to serve 288 students in a virtual setting. So those students that experience behavior challenges, we reassign them to our lunch virtual learning. At this time, I'd like for you to hear from Rebecca Kirby and also Dr. Josh Groves to talk about their behavior supports and things that were implemented on their campuses this year.
So at McGregor Elementary School, there was a lot of work that was done this year. And where I want to start with is that the lion's share of the work was done by the team. I don't own the work alone.
Sorry, it doesn't work real well unless you have it like right.
Oh, okay. That makes it even a little bit more uncomfortable, but that's okay.
Kelly.
I'll roll with it. So what I wanted to start with is the fact that this work is not just my work. This is the work of the larger team. None of it would have happened if it hadn't been for the fact that the team was ready to do something different in order to better serve the students that attend school at McGregor. And so I'll just jump right in. So we have a good majority of our teachers at McGregor are early career teachers. And so one of the things we wanted to do straight out of the gate was support them in knowing how do you start out the first day in the first week of school and establish the procedures that you need in your classroom in order for your classroom to function efficiently and safely. And so in school-wide PBIS, we don't assume that students know how we want them to behave when they're at school, because there are a lot of unwritten rules that we function by when we're at school. And so we teach all of those things to our students directly. And so we had an additional day of professional development before the school year started. Nearly every single staff member signed up to be present on that day to be a part of that work. And we largely focused that day on the first day and the first week of school, both in the classroom and school-wide, but also on the 8 effective classroom practices of PBIS, on what our building-wide expectations would be, learning about our matrix and about a major-minor system. And then also talking about parent communication. We even had a veteran principal in the building who modeled parent phone calls, because those can be really intimidating when you're making your first parent phone calls to share with parents, information that they don't necessarily want to hear. They want you to be in contact with them, but it's a hard conversation to have. And so being able to kind of model that and practice it. And so from there, we jumped into a ton of building-wide structures that are essential for PBIS to work well. And so one was PBIS boot camp that all the students participated in the first day of school, where they went from area to area in the building, learning the expectations for that specific area. Then also our building-wide matrix with classroom level lessons. Having a first responder team. That really is probably, it's a make it or break it point. Do you have a first responder team that when they come and respond to a student, they're gonna help make the situation safer and not worse? And so when you're working with students who have high levels of trauma, which we experience a lot of at McGregor, There are trauma-informed ways to interact with students, even when the student is out of control. And then tier 2 interventions, we have several in place. We have more work to do, but we have check-in, check-out, check and connect. We have small groups running and scheduled breaks in the focus room. We have a focus room that is staffed with a para. Our Burl therapist and school-based support specialists also work out of that space. But then we also have a student support room. We have an alternative classroom at McGregor right now. It was part of our effort to help get the culture shifted back to where aggressive and out of control behavior was not accepted by students. And so that room is staffed by certified behavior interventionist and also a para. That para is located in that room. But we all remember the day Nick came on the team, because it was a big impact on the building. His ability to immediately respond and willingness to immediately respond freed up so many resources. It was about that same time that Dr. Lathan visited our building. It was like in October, and she was delivering a computer to a para, and the admin team was having their first meeting during the school day when the three of us could sit down together. And so then also Safe Bucks and the Safe Cart, it's just a way to reinforce instant reinforcement, delayed reinforcement. Those things are all built into the PBIS system, moving a student from extrinsic motivation to intrinsic motivation when it comes to behavior. And then we have Safe Assemblies and Safe Heroes and big events and ABC field trips. We wanted to make it worth it to kids and families to be willing to do life differently. Sometimes when you get in the habit of doing things a certain way, it's hard to shift your habits. It's especially hard when you're moving into a new environment like school, and the expectations are not anything that you're familiar with. And so these were all provided by generous partners and donors that, again, staff pursued those partnerships, and they have made a huge impact on our students. It also gave our teachers an opportunity to celebrate with the students who were achieving the goals and that we had set out for them to achieve. And so big events happen every month, and students earn them solely with their behavior. ABC field trips happen quarterly, and they require attendance, behavior, and class effort. So the numbers, we are working on shifting the numbers. We have been able at this point, those numbers are still going to shift somewhat. We're a month out from the end of school, but to salvage 300 lost instructional days this year, to reduce the percentage of students with discipline almost by 50%. Is it a perfect system? No, absolutely it's not. We still have a lot of growth to do and a lot of work to be done. Every month we have a PBIS team that meets, as was mentioned before, and we review the big five. We're looking at the average number of ODRs, who got them, what did they do to get them, when did they get them, where did they get them, and then based on the data that we see, we write a SMART goal. And so there's a SMART goal example underneath that 3rd through 5th grade will decrease ODRs for hands-on behavior from 2 to 5 incidences per day at that period in time to 0 incidences per day between January 4th to January 31st, as measured by the Big 5 ODR report. So we coupled that with some other both consequences. You can see there, we work on what's called a solution plan, and that's part of school-wide PBIS. So once you write the SMART goal, you write a solution plan. You're looking for what are you going to do to prevent the behavior, and that's generally lessons at the classroom level. And then that goes into the teaching. What are you going to do to recognize students that are demonstrating the correct behavior? And then what's the corrective consequence? And so what we focused on at that time was establishing school-wide terminology of CAFUTI, and then also teaching a conflict resolution model called the time machine to help students, 1, understand the boundary, and 2, have a problem-solving strategy for when they get in a situation where they want to slap somebody. And then what's next? And I know this is a lot of information. It's really just an overview, but I think the bigger picture is that this is a big work. It can be a complicated work to look at what's going on in a school and what is the resolution going to be in order to get a school into a different place, in order to shift culture. So some of the things that we'll be working on over the next year is continuing to work through a new mission and vision, which we just wrote, collective commitments for the staff, and then hopefully, this is part of my vision for the building, rebranding our PBIS, because right now our primary goal, and it was a system that I inherited moving into the building, is to be safe. And the kids at McGregor can do a lot more than be safe. And so I want us to get to a place where we can shoot higher than being safe and really brand that idea across the building. Define the entry and exit criteria for two-tier intervention. So that's part of evolving the system. We want to know what gets a kid into a tier 2 intervention, what justifies it, but then also how do they work their way out of a tier 2 intervention? Because we don't want, if we are being effective, then a student will not need a tier 2 intervention forever. And then to expand the PBIS team into a larger action team with more representation. And so right now the PBIS team has largely been the response team. And so expanding that out to include staff representation so that they have shared leadership in that work. A school-wide common communication platform. So this has been feedback from parents that they want to know how can they hear from the teacher in an easy way, and how can they communicate back with the teacher in an easy way. And communication has really been a focus of ours this year. And then just continuing to build capacity in trauma-informed practices, in high engagement teaching strategies. And so that's also part of PBIS. That's in the 8 effective classroom practices. As you dial down through them, having really high engagement teaching strategies where you're expecting all of the kids to be engaged and responding. And then having a deep knowledge of SPED accommodations and modifications. And so we have a pretty high SPED population at McGregor, and knowing how to understand the IEP, what implications does that IEP have for your practice in the classroom, and then how can you best support those kids with a variety of disabilities to help prevent and also respond to behavior. So lots of work. Are you next? Thanks.
So that's a hard act to follow. Should be really proud of that work because it is hard and heavy. So I'm Josh Groves, building principal at Glendale High School. When the knowledge came to the high school admin team that we were going to implement PBIS at the site, I would be lying if I was like, what in the world is happening? We embraced it, and across the division have embraced the processes and the work, and it has truly made a difference in our building. So I'll take you through how I rolled it out to staff and some of the other pieces that are there. So we started the year with kind of these 2 big ideas, and so I'll let you take a moment and read those. So the top one, the reason that was chosen is because we deal with students who are not quite fully formed, but close. And so a lot of times their environment dictates the way that they behave or their reaction to certain circumstances that they encounter. And so we wanted to make sure that every student in our building was taught the expectations clearly so that they would know what that looks like in their environment at the high school level. And then the second one is that we have kids who struggle academically, and there are lots of reasons that can happen. One of those is that they lack the essential skills and knowledge that they need to be academically successful. But another is just that they have, over time, exhibited behaviors that have caused them to not learn the content that they should have learned along the way. And so it is our job to find solutions to both of those things. So we really focused in on the behavior piece and what we can do with that. So for us, the goals for this year were clear expectations for staff and students. So we just wanted to make sure that all of our staff and all of our students understood exactly what PBIS was, what it would look like, and how we would roll it out to our building. We also shared that with parents at all of our back-to-school parent meetings. And frankly, they were pretty excited to hear a lot about it. I learned from Dr. Lathan that I can take questions from the audience. And so I did that quite a lot this year. And so a lot of times I had parents that would comment on they like to see the structure, they like to see the processes that are there. We spent a lot of time talking about adult learning, providing adult learning, digging in pretty deep to Tier 1 PBIS implementation is what we focused on this year. And then accountability for our staff to make sure that when we roll out something that is an initiative, we want to make sure that they're accountable to that and that we do it effectively and efficaciously. We create a parent communication plan. I agree a lot with what Rebecca said about making sure that parents are informed and understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. We do class meetings, so quarterly we meet with our every grade level. We do that. We basically train them through that process of what their behavior expectations are. We also share other information, but every one of those class meetings has a PBIS component to it. We created a PBIS team and we used data as often as we could. So the Big Five is the piece that we focused on. And that trend data truly is telling, and it helps us to be more proactive in our response. So if I know that post-lunch we have behavior incidents in the hallway, then my admin team is going to cover those halls every day post-lunch. We make sure that we spread out and cover those areas to help minimize those opportunities for poor behavior choices. We incentivize positive behaviors. That's something that is new. It came with PBIS. We hadn't done that well. I specifically, personally, do not do that well, is to recognize those students who are doing the right thing every day when they come to school. So we had systems that we built to do that. And then to make sure that when you have assistant principals in the building, we want to make sure that no matter who your administrator is when you get called to the office, discipline will be consistently applied across, so we do it by alphabet. So no matter what your last name is, whoever your administrator is, we want to make sure that we administer discipline fairly across all students. So we worked really hard to do that. So PBIS, we created a culture leadership team, meets monthly, so we have about 18 teachers that volunteered to serve in that capacity, which is a pretty large number. They worked really hard this year. It was new, and so they had to do a lot of learning. I was blessed to have teachers that have worked in a PBIS school prior to working at Glendale, and so they brought prior knowledge that a lot of us did not have. We implement and sustain PBIS by teaching students appropriate behavior and give them the support to sustain that behavior. So I think it's one thing to teach them what the expectation is. It is another thing a month, 60 days, 80 days down the line to make sure that they still see and understand what that is and that they are accountable to that behavior expectation. And then we create a behavior matrix, which I will show you in a minute, and then we use that as our third-party document to define, teach, and reinforce what the expectations are. Again, we did major minor discipline guide to distinguish between what classroom managed behaviors are and office managed behaviors. The beauty of that is that's something that we have done for a really long time in schools. That's not something new. So I, many years ago, was Dr. Powers' assistant principal, and so I had a document that we had worked with previously, and so I was able to reference that. Our BSIP has 100% of teachers that will teach school-wide expectations. So I didn't want nobody gets to fall through the cracks on this. So everybody's going to get the learning about what the expected behaviors are, and then we'll create the accountability around that. And then we positively reinforce that in a lot of different ways, which I'll share a little bit now. So this is our school-wide matrix. I wanted it to actually mean something. A lot of times I feel like you create a document like this. Teachers built this. So my staff is who designed this. They chose the language, what they were comfortable with. We had lots of dialogue around what the best way to do that is, what things we need to focus on, and how we roll it out to students. The way we taught students is that we built modules to start the school year, and so we do those every quarter. Basically, the first block teacher of the day teaches a certain part of the matrix, and then the second block teacher teaches another part of the matrix. And that way, by the end of the school day on the first day, it takes about 10 minutes to complete a module. Every student in the building has been taught the entire matrix. We do that quarterly. It is a really good reminder. We do things like every time we have an assembly, we roll out the assembly matrix and teachers reteach that. So we pretty regularly talk about hallway behavior, make those announcements during the school day. We'll cover the hallway expectations over the announcements just randomly throughout the school year as well. And then we created a class meeting schedule where this was taught to students. So I asked teachers to teach it in the classroom, and then the administrative team during class meetings reinforced the message that they received from teachers so that students recognize that it's a unified plan across the building. This is the two documents that we developed to make sure that we have a solid plan and understanding of how we attack the behaviors that occur in the building. And so on the left, you see the major minor. The thing about major minor that I think is important to know is that minor behaviors can be referred to the office as well. We do have expectations that there is a phone call home or some other things like that could occur prior to that. And then office managed behaviors are typically things where you wouldn't ask a teacher to intervene in that specifically. It could be a student that's not being safe in the classroom, could be something that you worry about, could turn into a fight or assault, could be drugs or alcohol, it could be any of those type of things. And so that's an administrator immediate response to those things. Tiers of behavior support, again, this was, our teachers worked with us on this. It's actually built for next year. We have some modifications that need to occur as we learn through PBIS what things work in our building and what things don't. We need to modify that document and make some updates. We're looking also at some tier 2 entry and exit things to some interventions. We're going to call those, Dr. Hannigan calls them academies, and I think that's the language we plan to use as well. But we will use that there. So one of the things that I talked about earlier is making sure that it was implemented across the classrooms. And so we developed a tiered fidelity inventory checklist. What that document does is when we go into a classroom to observe a teacher teaching, we will also want to look and see is PBIS being utilized in that classroom on a daily basis. And so what does that look like? And so we just built a fidelity checklist to make sure that we could have data that we take back then to our PBIS team. And then we review the Big 5 discipline data with Dr. Wen when she visits regularly. And then our admin team also built that into our administrative agenda. So we look at those things. The trend data there is really helpful, creates an opportunity to be more proactive in your responses. And then to incentivize positive behaviors, that was really a big shift for us in our building. So we have a flight plan. So RTI is really important to support the students who need the additional academic support. And so we have a 30-minute period in our day, right in the middle, 4 days a week. We use a draft model where teachers can draft students who they need to see to support academically. When every teacher in the building has 30 kids in class and you draft an additional 4 that you need to work with on a very specific standard, it becomes difficult to manage if none of your students are drafted out of that room. And so what we did is we found a way to incentivize attendance, behavior, and grades. So every student that meets all of those requirements are able to leave that classroom. They come to the cafeteria, and for 30 minutes we have we use our clubs actually adopt a week. So every club in the building can adopt a week throughout the year, and then they are in charge of incentivizing that week for the students. And so there's a lot of cool things that happen there. If you would like to come by during karaoke week, it is sometimes not pleasant, but it is fun. So we do lots of things that kids come, they really enjoy it. Typically in a normal week, we'll have 750 to 850 students who meet the requirements to be in attendance for that. Assembly incentives, so we built out several assemblies this year that we also utilize that same kind of requirement to attend that assembly. So our Veterans Day assembly is one of the, it's the most nerve-wracking thing that we do, because I always hope that our students understand the gravity of recognizing those that serve our country. And so it's very important that our behavior is exceptional when we have veterans in the building. And so we made that one of our flight assemblies this year. And so we had 830 students that were able to attend that assembly. And then we live streamed that assembly to all of the other classrooms during that time. And so being there in person was really a cool thing for our kids. And there were lots of students afterwards who have made the changes that were necessary to their behavior or grades to be able to attend the next assemblies. The dance incentives and final exam incentives came from the district. Those are a little bit more long-term, so they're further out typically for students. And so it's something to work for and towards for an entire semester. And so they're accountable the entire semester to attend or to have final exam incentives, so they can not take finals if they are making a high grade, have not had a discipline referral for the entire semester, and have 90% attendance or higher. And so that has worked really well. We are doing field day this year, so our students, feedback from our students is that they would like to do field day. They're basically really large elementary kids. So we will do field day the last 2 days of the school year for those that meet those requirements. And so in high school, they don't necessarily qualify in every class. So they'll come in and out during the day in 90-minute windows. And then dance incentives. So another one is that. So our first dance was homecoming. This is the first time we've ever done it. I would be lying if I said it was easy to tell a student that you had an office referral and so you aren't allowed to attend the homecoming dance. And so that happened a lot. But I can tell you that leading up to that and post that first dance, it truly changed the way our students looked at those things, as it is a true incentive. Like they earned the right to be there. And so I was really proud of that work, and I'm appreciative of those opportunities that we were given. So this is a video. I don't know how to play it. One of our students noticed PBIS, and this is a video that they made in October. All the high schools have journalism programs, and so this is one of our high school journalism programs, and this is what they think.
Sound, Stephen.
My voice sounds so weird.
Have you been wondering why everyone is going to the Commons during intervention, but now known as flight? Well, here is Dr. Groves and Paige Ramsey to tell you what's going on and what's new.
So PBIS, which is Positive Behavior Intervention and Support, is a district program that is a K-12 initiative. And the purpose would be to make sure that we're, as sites, teaching what the behavior expectations of our students are, and then holding them accountable to that. It's a tiered intervention system, and so it allows us to work through multiple tiers of intervention and make sure that we're providing students the support that they need to be able to maintain a positive and safe environment and hopefully be more academically successful.
So basically, it's like a solid 30 minutes for students to all meet in the Commons, and they get to listen to music, they get to hang out, they can win prizes. Whenever you go to intervention in a classroom to seek help from a teacher, sometimes there can be too many kids and it distracts your teacher. So when there's somewhere for the kids to go, it opens up space in classrooms for students to get help and creates less of a distraction in intervention.
Our attendance currently is up a little over 9% year to date compared to last year, which is a huge jump. Yeah, so I would say student behavior overall is on an upward trend, especially some of what I would call like our classroom behaviors have decreased over time, and so I think that is a positive. We're working hard to make sure that our teachers can teach and the students that are there can learn. So I think the classroom environment has been positively impacted by this.
I also enjoy just like the little break in the day I get, so I think it's really great. So please make sure you keep your attendance and your grades up so that you can join us for our flight.
I found it interesting what our students' interpretation was pretty accurate, which I felt good about. Like they understood why we were doing what we were doing. So next steps for us are going to be very similar. So we need to continue to work on Tier 1 implementation. We have a lot of growth opportunities in the work of Tier 1. Next year we will add Tier 2, and so for us that's going to be academies. What we're going to do with academies is identify specific behaviors in our building that are trending upward, and then we will create or will be created for us. We're not sure exactly what that will look like yet, but we're going to basically create modules for those students where they will have to attend and sit with an adult who will teach them the expectations of those behaviors and the negative impacts of those on their education. And so hopefully there has to be, I don't want it to be a life sentence, right? So like a student has a certain behavior, they exhibit those behaviors, they learn from that, and then they no longer exhibit those behaviors. I want to make sure that we can exit them from that program as well. That's just almost as important as identifying those that go in. So we're going to do that work this summer. Utilize our PBIS teams to create, we're going to create sub-teams, and they're going to work through the academy piece. So that I want them to take ownership of that. My team, that's what they want to do, which worked out really nice. So teachers are going to take some ownership of those academies, the things that they're passionate about or the things that they see in their classrooms. They're going to help support their colleagues in working with that. And then increase staff capacity for working with students who exhibit behaviors. As population changes, you deal with different behaviors in students that you maybe have not in the past, especially if you are a veteran teacher. And so you may see things that you are not accustomed to in behavior. We have things that are changing citywide. And so I just think it's important that we honor that we name it, and that we address it, and that we create an opportunity for our staff to be supported through that. So I would say PBIS overall has helped a lot in our building with classroom-specific issues. So the things that create a situation where students can't learn because of distraction and behaviors that occur in the classroom, I think those have gone way down. We do still have discipline, and we still work those. We still work every referral that comes to the office. But this process has changed the conversation that you can have with students, because now you don't have to teach the student. You can reference the fact that you've been taught what the expectations are. Here's the outcome of your behavior is why you're sitting here in front of me, and here's what the consequence of that is. So next time, here's what we're going to do differently. And those conversations are different because a lot of times when you're working those referrals prior, you literally had to teach the student, this behavior is not acceptable, and here's the reasons why. We're well beyond that now because they've been taught the expectations in a way that really we have not done in the past.
I think the McGregor team is going to slip out because we have a banquet tonight.
So you know what, we're gonna adjust our lesson. Isn't that great? So because yes, McGregor needs to leave in case there are questions for either Ms. Kirby or Dr. Groves. Why don't we, board members, take those at this time because they do have a district event, a school event.
I'm very impressed with both of you and the work that's going on at your schools. It's really hard and complex work, as you both have mentioned, but you clearly have been putting in the work. I'm curious about your transfer and new students. I know that both of you talk about the beginning of the year expectations and setting those out with regards to making sure that the students know what those expectations are. What happens when you have new and transfer students throughout the school year?
So you bring up a very good point, and that's definitely an opportunity for growth for us. I think right now the bulk of that work is on the classroom teacher to help bring the student kind of up to speed on what the expectations are. But I have seen models in the past where there would be like a newcomer academy or something like that. And seeing that we have the highest transiency in the district, it's definitely an opportunity and something for us to talk about.
Yes, so opportunity for us as well. Right now, our counselors do talk about PBIS when they do enrollment, which is a really nice piece because that's typically the first person that they spend any meaningful time with is that counselor for scheduling. We also, I would say, and I'm sure that this happens as well, we regularly talk about the matrix so frequently that even if you miss a lesson and you're there for 4 or 5 days a week, it's probably not going to go 2 weeks without that reference to that matrix being made so that they're going to see it pretty regularly. Again, opportunity for growth. Newcomer Academy is definitely one of the ones that we plan to build as well.
One for each of you. Ms. Kirby, ODR, what does that stand for? If you told us, I don't remember.
I didn't. It's an office discipline referral.
Got it. And Dr. Groves, how much did you say your attendance has gone up? I almost gasped.
So we were up, when that video was made, we were up 9%. We're about a little over 4% up right now.
That's incredible.
About your attendance?
She's winning. She's always winning.
It's not me though. Like that's not fair. It's all of us. It's been a united. The theme for SBS this year has been SBS United. It's been a united effort. Our 90/90 is up almost 18%.
Have you had the trophy all year?
All year.
I've had the trophy all year. Sometimes I just don't bring it.
It is really big.
Every SLT, every month we recognize the schools with most improved attendance, and so we recognize them, and they're able to take the traveling trophy. So McGregor's had a traveling trophy. They had the trophy all year.
It's just the McGregor trophy.
I have a question. Ms. Kirby, you put actual discipline and behavior numbers on this screen. I think that there has been a perception that perhaps those numbers are, I don't want to say inaccurate, but that perhaps there are people in the classroom who are being encouraged not to report discipline referrals. Is that what you're seeing, or how are we ensuring that those numbers that we see on the screen are accurate to the behaviors that we're seeing in the classroom?
So I think that where that comes into play is the shift to a major minor flow chart. And so as long as teachers have been teachers in the classroom, there have always been behaviors that are managed at the classroom level, and there are behaviors that are managed at the office level. And so that has been a shift. So as we work next year on developing our entry and exit points for tier 2 interventions, again, another opportunity for growth, because it's a big, like I had said before, it's a big work. Another opportunity for growth would be for us to target in on minor behaviors that are repeated minor behaviors, and begin to respond to those behaviors in a way that's helpful to students to learn. And so that's where I think it comes into play. So as we have made shifts this year, we worked through some things definitely in the beginning. I want to say my first day at McGregor, I think we may have had more than 20 kids elope the classroom. And so it was needing to learn new habits and new behaviors. We did hard work around elopement. The same thing with destruction in the classroom. So a kid getting frustrated and not having good boundaries around what was appropriate to do at school when you're frustrated. I would say it's a rare occasion that we have a classroom get destructed at this point at McGregor. And so that's been a shift. When I was interviewing teachers over the summer, I'm sorry, I'll be real with you. When I was interviewing teachers over the summer, I had teachers share with me things like desks being turned over, chairs being turned over, things being thrown, materials being destroyed. And so we had a lot of big work to do. And so we are still in that process. And so what we have tried to do is, as the year has progressed, and we have progressively increased our expectations, and at the same time, we have also progressively increased our response to students. So we have students that are, they've worked through like our student support room. Like we had some students that had to go to full containment in an alternative classroom. And we have students that have worked that process and been able to work their way back into the classroom. We have students who have worked that process and also now are just being identified as having emotional disturbances. And so that was an intervention we put in place to vet out who are our kids who can respond to instruction and can learn to do school differently, and who are our students that something else is at play here and they're going to need more support. So those discipline numbers represent office level behavior that we've responded to at an office level. The team is here. I'll just have them respond. How do you guys feel about office level behavior at this year? Because I just interviewed them all over the last couple of months. when we're talking about teacher assault, destroying the classroom, those types of big laying hands on other students, what would you say? Significant differences. And we started hearing that about in October, where we would have people visit the building and they would walk in the doors and they would say, oh my goodness, it's different.
Rebecca, if I may, can you tell me specifically what you do in a focus room and how long would a student actually spend in a focus room?
So our focus room, we have a couple of rooms that I've referenced today, one being the traditional focus room and one being the student support room. Our focus room is a proactive focus room. If a student is unsafe or dysregulated, they're coming to the office. Because for us, like the level of behavior that we see when we have students out of trauma start to go into dysregulation, they really need somebody to work with them who has been dealing with that kind of behavior day in and day out over a period of time, and who, so when I was referencing the response team at the beginning of the year, we called it the crisis team, because when we would respond, it was students in crisis. In our focus room, they tend to spend about 10 minutes. So we have students that are identified as Tier 2 students. They have proactive scheduled breaks that was worked out between the teacher and the para who staffs that room. And they come down, and really the large part of what we do in the focus room is relationship building, because then that para is also one of our responders. So when a student that's on like her list, her caseload, needs assistance in the classroom and is not responding, they're much more likely to respond to her when she comes to them. And then in the student support room, which is the alternative classroom, we have students who are spending a variety of amounts of time in there. We have some students that just needs to be their home base. Because they need to be in a smaller classroom setting. There's a certified teacher in there. She collaborates closely with the classroom teacher. She's able to provide them with intervention, and she's been hugely successful. I've seen kids go into there like originally be assigned, and within 6 weeks go from a non-reading second grader to a reading second grader, just because they were able to not be distracted by their classmates, not be frustrated, those types of things, have their curriculum more tailored to them. But then we have some students now that at this point, that's just a check-in place for them. They have a super tight relationship with Mr. Nick and Miss Rippey, who staff that room. And they can check in, and that's also a resource to them if they're in the classroom and they're struggling and they find themselves needing support.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Everybody got my questions out there, so this is great. I was going to ask about CICO, Check and Connect. Is that what you were just describing?
So Check In, Check Out, and Check and Connect are a couple of interventions that are recommended by PBIS. So they're kind of from the original work. Dr. Hannigan also does some work that's like really tightly aligned with PBIS, and his format is the academies. And so there are several different recommended models of Tier 2 intervention. And I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, so I'll try to make it super brief. But Check In, Check Out is a model that's primarily for attention-seeking behavior. And so what you do is you pair the child with a preferred adult, and then they have a schedule throughout the day, and they usually have 2 goals that they're working on, an easy goal and a hard goal. And then they earn points throughout the day. And then it's also done in collaboration with the parent, because they have like 4 to 5 no-cost rewards that they can earn at home. And if they earn or meet their goal on their points, the parent provides the reward at home, and the adult at school is building a relationship with them. Check and Connect is another mentoring program where we're tracking attendance, behavior, classwork, but then there's an added component where the mentor checks in with the classroom teacher and then also checks in with the student to see if their perception of what is going on is in alignment. Because sometimes the child perceives that they're doing fine, when in all actuality, they're not doing all right. And so that's able to provide kind of that clarity, and then the mentor can step in and come shoulder to shoulder with the kid and kind of talk to them about it.
Thank you. And while you talking, and you might think you're getting into the weeds and too detailed, it's been very helpful to me. So I want to thank you for that. I came into this when people say tier 1, tier 2, I think of it from an academic sense because we've had those, I don't want to say lectures, but presentations. So those of us who are not from the education world are understanding a lot of it we know, right? It's common sense as parents and as adults, but learning the lingo and understanding how it actually works in an education setting has been very helpful. But a lot of what you said has actually been new to me. I mean, I hear PBIS, but that video where you actually went through the acronym, I'm sure we've had information, but it's another thing when somebody speaks it to you and gives you examples in your triangle. Super helpful. Tier 1 is basically just everyday, right? I sort of assumed everybody has always done tier 1. Like I thought that was school. But it sounds like PBIS is just formalizing what we already do.
Yes.
With the addition of tier 2 and tier 3 with these innovative, interventions that are maybe innovative in ways to address the problems that we see today that maybe weren't there 20 years ago, right? So this was really helpful. And if I can just wrap up, so would I be correct to say that PBIS is just setting expectations and holding kids accountable with positive reinforcements? And that all these acronyms like CICO, thank you, helps a lot. But there was a lot of, you hear them, but all of it is really centered on that. Would that be accurate to say? That's the...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. With positive reinforcement, but also with corrective consequence.
With...
Corrective consequence.
Okay, so consequences for actions.
Yes.
Got
yeah,
it.
They both have to go hand in hand. The positive reinforcement teaches students what you want them to do, and the corrective consequence teaches them what you don't want them to do, and you have to have both pieces at play at the same time.
Got it.
I think what it did for us is it just named some of the actions and processes that we had already long been established, things we've done, and effective teachers have done PBIS with, whether they knew it or not, for a really long time. But what PBIS did, it created common language. I think it created some processes, and it allowed us an opportunity then to, when you can name something, it gives it power. And so
Right,
it
I guess
allowed
that's
us
what I was
to-
getting to. It sounds like we've always done this, haven't we? But now there's common language around it and some new techniques, it sounds like.
It is more formal, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Very, very informative, which helps us, just to understand how things work, which helps us, I just think throughout our job here, sitting in these seats. I feel extra fortunate since I was able to visit both of your schools in the last few weeks. So this felt, I don't know, like I was able, like tangible, I was able to see the things that you're talking about to some extent in a short visit. I wanted to ask one question, and I feel free not to answer if you don't have an answer. But from a board perspective, so a lot of what you've talked about here is informational and helpful. This isn't board level stuff that we would get involved in, right? It's just informational, which is helpful. Is there anything, and again, you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but is there anything that we can do as a board level to help? You're obviously putting in the work, you're seeing results. This is a moment, I just wanted to afford you the opportunity. If there's anything on your mind, anything you can think of that would, that you could share with us that would allow us to help from the board level with the things that you're doing.
I think it's great when you guys want to know what's going on. And so I think an opportunity for us to share the work, to recognize the people who are doing the work. And I know my colleagues are out here too. It looks different in every building. The work is responsive to the students that you serve. There are teachers across the district that are really going as fast as they can go right now, and administrators and support staff to try to move and shift student behavior in ways that are positive and that are conducive to having a healthy learning environment. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to have the conversation with you and just share an example, of what the work means. You guys had challenged the district with the 15-step plan last year, and people have been in the work, and we will continue to be in it because it's just like all the other work we're doing. We're always looking for what can we do to serve students better and to experience more success for them.
I think for me, it would be, to honor teachers would be, they're the ones who do the work. Like it's hard in the classroom, day in and day out. And I think that would be the thing that I don't know what that looks like. I have no idea, but teachers are the ones who every day are implementing curriculum that is challenging to students who are, some of them, not academically ready, intervening effectively for kids who are multiple grade levels behind, while also maintaining a positive environment, building relationships, meeting needs that some of these kids have, a lot of our kids have, hunger, hygiene, safe space to sleep. And we're trying to teach them Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 and how to write a 5-paragraph essay. And so I just think to honor teachers would be the way that would be my suggestion. It's hard to be a teacher, and I think that they deserve that recognition. I have no idea what that looks like, but I would leave that with you.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you. So moving on to our second part of our agenda was around Superintendent Solutions. And also we're going to have a teacher spotlight. When we started Superintendent Solutions several months ago, it was around 4 areas: strategic input, to receive input from teachers across the district that are out in the classrooms, engage in timely communication about district initiatives and priorities, taking it back to even our 15-step discipline plan, curriculum, improvement, ways that we could improve on our current structures and problems of practice, and then to collaborate, not only for teachers to be able to collaborate with myself, but also their colleagues across the district. And so the engagement process started in January and went up all the way up until today. As you can see, leaders includes our building level principals, then also the teacher sessions. There were leader sessions, then there were teacher and leader sessions together. And then we wrapped that up yesterday and today, sharing information again with our teachers. Participation numbers, you can see the breakdown of the numbers of the participants throughout the Superintendent Solutions process. Very appreciative that our teachers and building leaders participated in the process and provided feedback. We also had other staff members from early childhood, special education, fine arts, also our gifted programs, our virtual program that participated. When we gathered together, there were 4 big topics that continue to be part of our conversation, and going back to, if you think about success-ready students, looking at priority 1, curriculum and assessment, special education, student behavior, teacher professional learning. And what I wanted to hear from our teachers and our administrators is what was working, what did we need to slow down on, and maybe what we needed to stop. And so we started that conversation around those 4 areas. And I want you to hear from Jennifer Givens. She's a 3rd grade teacher at Delaware Elementary School, and then Clarissa Pullman, who is a foreign language teacher at Pershing Middle School, about their experience with Superintendent Solutions. Clarissa and Jennifer.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Givens, and I'm actually a 3rd, 4th split grade teacher this year. So that comes with a whole wealth of craziness. But I want to thank Dr. Lathan and Dr. Holt for inviting me to be here today so that I can just share my experience with Superintendent Solutions. And I'd also like just to thank the board members for everything that you do for us on a daily basis. I will admit, when I first got the email in January, I thought it was a phishing email. I was scared to click on the link. And I was like, okay, then I kind of read it a little closer, actually saw my name in there, and checked with Mrs. Young. Did you really put my name in? Yes, she did. So then I was able to confidently click forward. And so I attended the meeting on January 17th, and we were pretty much elementary tier 1 schools at that day. And we were given those 4 topics that she just highlighted for you, and we had some individual think time where we thought about what's working for us personally, what should we slow down on, what would we think you should stop altogether, and then we had our table discussions where we just went through them again, and it kind of warms your teacher's heart when other teachers are saying and thinking some of the same things are working and some of the same things aren't. And then we got up as a whole group and we rotated around the room recording that information on, big chart paper. And as we went through each chart, if things were already on there, we starred them so that we could understand how many people were thinking about those things. And then I kind of thought we would be done for the day. But Dr. Lathan took those chart papers and she slapped them up on the wall and she said, okay, give it to me. What do these things mean? What's really working? What do you mean when you say the DCAs need to be better aligned? And we stood there probably longer than she would have hoped us because we kind of went past our time, but she was really just truly asking, why did you put this here? Why does this have so many stars by it? And so I left there just being very grateful that she listened to us that day. We were told there was like 3 or 4 more teacher meetings and there'd be some principal meetings and they'd get back to us. And I'm like, so you kind of leave there thinking, okay, we'll see what comes of this. And sure enough, they did. Invited us back to a combination teacher principal meeting. And in that meeting, we were given paperwork that just aligned what all did the teachers say in all those meetings that were held? What did the administration say in all those meetings that were held? And how did they compare? How did they contrast? And we sat again at our table and kind of discussed the different areas. And then we got up in the big room and again, chart paper all around. And we just decided, okay, I'm going to go here, you're going to go there. And we kind of went through that same process and made a list of what Dr. Lathan refers to as quick wins. What are some things that we could do for you immediately? They're not going to take funding. They're not going to take major life decisions. What are some things that we could fix right away? What are some things that maybe we could fix in the future, but it might take a little more time to work through those? And then what are some things like we know we'd love to have them, but we know they're probably like really low on the totem pole. And so we had those big conversations. And again, I left there. I just felt really grateful that we were able to kind of speak our mind. Because sometimes you go to things and you're like, okay, what do they really want me to say? But we felt really confident that we could say what we truly felt and truly believed that day. And so then, let me just see if I kind of touched, and then we had the Zoom meeting yesterday, so you're going to get to hear some of the quick wins that she thinks that she can do for us right now, and we're grateful for those. We know there are things that are still kind of on that list. The quick win list was pretty big, so we know you can't do it all at one time, but we appreciate the things that she's ready to put forward and share with you guys today. And I'm just really thankful. This is my 21st year in Springfield Public Schools. I started out as a substitute teacher when they actually hired substitute teachers. And then I became a paraprofessional and did that for 9 years under Joe Calloway and Jason Steingraber. And my colleagues there convinced me to go back to school. And so I've been a classroom teacher now for 9 years. And in those 9 years, I have taught kindergarten and first grade in the summer, because that's all I'm brave enough to do with those grades. And I've taught second through fifth in the years I've been at Delaware. And I have a 3-4 split class this year. I had a 2-3 split class when we came back from COVID. So it's just nice to be able to share what works, be able to speak honestly about what doesn't sometimes. So I just appreciate you guys listening and allowing us to be here today.
Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to reflect on my experience at the February Superintendent Solutions meeting. My name is Clarissa Pullman. I'm wrapping up my 14th year of teaching. I've spent the last 11 years with Springfield Public Schools as the Spanish teacher at Pershing Middle School, and I'm happy to be here today to represent Pershing and also the world language teachers. Initially, when I received, it's funny because Jennifer and I did not talk about what we were going to say but it's comical to me. I received the invitation from Dr. Lathan, and I thought it was an email that was most likely sent to other teachers in my school. I noticed that the timing would be challenging for me to attend. My husband is a teacher and a head coach in the district, and we have a little one that I pick up directly after school from daycare. I wondered if I could manage to make the time. I thought this is a fantastic opportunity, one that I don't want to miss, but surely someone in our school would be better suited to attend. So to my surprise, my building principal, Mr. Wells, followed up and asked me to pick a time. He reached out asking which date would be best for me and made it possible for me to attend the meeting while still having time to attend my after-school mom duties. I was grateful for his flexibility, but it left me wondering, why me? I'm just the Spanish teacher at a middle school. Am I truly cut out to talk about solutions for our very large district? Am I confident enough to voice opinions? I didn't know what to expect and wanted to represent my school well, but despite my initial worries, I know there's a lot of value in connecting with colleagues district-wide and sharing thoughts that I have or that I've heard others share with me this year. So I shifted my mindset to excitement and felt grateful to have been chosen, hoping to be a source of positivity or just soak up some helpful information. Upon reflection, I see that individuals were chosen with the intent to represent our various departments and age groups within the district. It is reassuring that our leaders want to offer every group a voice and representation. This means a lot to me as I am part of a small group of world language teachers, and we often question if we're big enough to be heard. Walking into KAC and seeing familiar faces from different schools put me immediately at ease. The welcoming and friendly atmosphere made it easier for me to share and open up. I snuck in some quick hugs from teacher friends that I don't get to see a lot, and then found my seat beside Mr. Wells and an elementary teacher from school. Dr. Lathan initiated the meeting, prompted us to stand and gather in small groups with others who had previously attended sessions. Listening to those who attended before, I noted how building leaders and teachers are faced with similar hurdles and challenges during the school year. This immediately bridged a gap in my head that I often feel exists between administration and teaching staff. And we rarely have the opportunity in the hustle and bustle of everyday school life to recognize that we're all facing the same challenges. There's just not enough time to talk about it all. Returning to our tables, we reflected on main takeaways from previous meetings, key points being curriculum and assessment, special education, student behavior, professional learning. We each tackled one topic to discuss with our small group. It was enlightening to break down information with my building leader and another teacher, realizing the common challenges we navigate daily are taking place all over the district, and maybe we aren't alone. It was nice to ask my principal questions to clarify things that never really made sense to me. And I think pinpointing the big picture issue gives decision makers clarity on a good place to start, and we can decide priorities that are seemingly impacting the entire district and make changes, or as Dr. Lathan says, quick wins. As the meeting progressed, we split into groups, focusing on main topic concerns identified in previous sessions. My school, Pershing, we joined up with the district common assessment group. It consisted of a balance of perspectives from both secondary and elementary levels. I was happy to be in this group because the DCA has been a huge topic within the world language department and has directly impacted my students. Am I cutting in and out? Okay, sorry. I heard sound opinions from others, things I hadn't considered, and even felt comfortable sharing some ideas of my own. One takeaway is that each subject, grade level, and school can vary slightly in its own way. Still, there were enough commonalities between us all to have a great conversation about how we would like things to happen next school year and for the remainder of the year. Since the meeting, better. Guys, I'm not good at this. Whew. Since the meeting, okay, I feel better already. Since the meeting, Dr. Lathan has discussed modifying length and number, timing, and how we utilize data regarding DCAs, all of the challenges my department has faced this year, along with many other departments in the district. Though they may not be immediate, I hope changes can happen to better serve our students. As the meeting wrapped up, Dr. Lathan prompted us to identify actionable changes. What can we stop doing now? What can be a quick fix? I appreciated the immediate face-to-face feedback from Dr. Lathan. This was refreshing compared to the online feedback we are accustomed to as a district. It felt authentic. She did not shy away from hard truths, which I know most would appreciate. I know I did. The emphasis on solutions rather than complaints really resonated. It's easy to get caught up in the negative in any profession. I'm guilty of it myself. We weren't posting complaints into thin air as we often do with online surveys, but we shared truths about what we live out daily in our classrooms. Being asked to give our input made me feel trusted as a professional in my classroom and my subject. And teaching can sometimes feel isolating, but being part of this process and understanding the why behind initiatives feels really key to staff buy-in. I look forward to attending more Superintendent Solutions in the future. It is comforting that our district is willing to address issues and make changes if they know something is not working. I'd like to hear more possible modifications to professional learning opportunities and differentiation for new and veteran teachers. This opportunity also helps teachers like myself to grow and stretch as educators. Teachers who would not usually step out of their comfort zone and volunteer to share their feelings with a larger group. However, I am passionate about my students and how their year goes in my classroom, and that means I need to be more active in sharing how to help them most. I firmly believe that teachers know what's best for their students and their classroom families, and that our voices need to be some of the loudest. We spend most of the time with these students and know and care about them as individuals. I left the meeting feeling hopeful. I called my teacher friend and told her the meeting went really well. I told her that I wish more teachers could attend Superintendent Solutions. I feel like more educators and staff might be more likely to trust that leaders will listen and commit to positive changes for our students' daily lives and the success of our schools. I also told my friend that I'm not overthinking anything I said or shared, which if you know me well, that speaks volumes about how I think things went. So thank you for your time today, bearing with my tech issues, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you both. And you're going to hear some things that you just said. I didn't know what they were saying today, but one of the requests to the principals was actually to recommend people that don't necessarily always agree with our principals, because those are the people who will tell you truthfully how things are. And so I do appreciate you all participating and attending. So some of the things that they've mentioned around the quick wins and things that they shared with us, and you're going to hear about some future work shortly, board members, is around those essential standards, reteaching, district common assessments with guides, a focus on academic and behavior routines, procedures week one. One of the things we heard from teachers is, immediately the first day of school, you're expecting us to jump into curriculum and start teaching, and we need to be teaching those routines around academic expectations and behaviors. And so we've built that into our curriculum guides for the upcoming school year. District common assessments, heard a lot about that, around the length and the number, also the timing of the course of the school year, especially November and December, and also at the end of the school year as we're preparing for MAP and EOCs. And so we've made those necessary adjustments. Training for all staff, there's been a continuous disconnect, and it has been for years. I'd say I've been in education over 30 years now, of understanding special education and understanding from a gen ed standpoint or a classroom teacher standpoint how special ed works, what are the requirements, what are the laws. And so one of the things we heard is all staff, our building leaders, our classroom teachers, and our special education teachers need, and paras need training around special education. And so next year we're coining it Special Ed 101 and making sure, and also board members are going to bring you along with us because I think we need to spend some time making sure you also have that information. Communication, we heard information around flow charts. What happens if a student is referred, or what is the process? And so we heard a lot about the referral process, transitions, and other identification processes. So we're going to spend some time around that. Behavior, student behavior, quick wins, focus room staffing, ongoing training, also identifying those outstanding focus rooms across the district so that classroom teachers and other staff members can see those classrooms and see the resources. It was also requested for a lesson plan bank for PBIS supports. That was something that the teachers requested. Also money and incentives for focus room supports. Professional learning, teach forward, menu of choices, spread out the learning across the year, not just in August and November. Differentiation, back to veteran versus new staff, not a one-size-fits-all is what we heard, and then increased opportunities for individual and site-based PD, not only throughout the school year, but also during the summer. So I'm going to transition board members to our climate and culture survey. We've shared here just a few highlights. There's a rollout process for the climate and culture survey that was conducted last month. Board members, you will receive your report or the information this Friday in your weekly update. Then staff will receive the final report and information through the weekly update in 2 weeks, and then also parents. So information will be shared out. Like I said, these are just a few highlights we wanted to point out because there was one that stuck out that I wanted to drill into today. And you saw the numbers on the screen of participation. And so it was broken down, of course, by students, by staff, and also by parents. And you see the percentages of students as it relates to how they feel that they can do in school by 3rd through 5th grade, also our secondary students. Feeling that their teachers care about them. You see the percentages for elementary versus secondary. And I think about that from a standpoint of age also as we look at these results. Feeling safe at school, you see the percentages there of the 90% from elementary, but 68% as it relates to middle and high school students. I know how to report bullying at my school. You see the breakdown of the percentages there for elementary and also secondary students. My teachers notice if I have trouble learning, you see the percentages there, like I said, between elementary and secondary. All students are treated fairly. You see the percentages at elementary level versus secondary percentages there. So that 44% strongly agree. So that's one that we are drilling down to look at and to discuss that more. And we've also discussed these preliminary numbers with our leaders. I like going to this school as you see the breakdown between elementary and then middle school students. And so being able to drill down once again to the schools and holding discussions at various schools around the percentage. Next one, I'm treated with respect at my school or in this department. You see over 81%. This is moving into staff now. I feel safe at this school. I feel safe at this school or in this department. Over 80% said that they agree. Here's one that, feeling that the school or department treats students fairly is 82% there. Feeling like they belong in their school or their department that they're assigned to. You see that percentage. Here's one that we're drilling down and we'll be looking at. You heard me say that at the very beginning of the presentation. You also heard both of our principals talk about areas of needed growth is ensuring that discipline is fairly applied across SPS. Is ensuring that there's an understanding of how we apply discipline, but understanding that people understand what the consequences are, and then how the decision as it relates to the building administrator making that decision. So that's one we'll spend time with looking at. Like I said, principals have already seen these percentages. These are the family results. My child is treated fairly at school. This is, like I said, from our families, parents, caregivers. My child likes attending this school, focusing down and drilling down to their individual school. My child feels physically safe at the school, 78%. A child has a problem at school, there is someone who can help. Over 77% of our families agree to that. And my child receives the educational support that they need, 75% agree there. As I stated, we will share the information out, and then we'll be digging deeper and addressing some of the percentages where there were under 50% or more, as it relates to strongly agree or agree, to be able to address those. Oh, and then that was the one from parents, and the school's discipline is fairly applied at 63%. And our final portion today of the agenda is around forecast, which is our future work and plan to address based on what you've heard. Thank you. What you've heard this afternoon. So future work around curriculum and assessment. Once again, you heard some of the areas that our teachers and principals shared. There were concerns around essential standards, the selection of identifying those based on the Missouri Learning Standards, the pacing and realignment, ensuring as we create our pacing guides that information is structured, but that teachers have the ability to reteach, to go back and make the necessary adjustments without feeling the pressure of to keep going and keep going. DCAs, remember DCA stands for District Common Assessment. Our review, our curriculum academies kicked off in January, February. Those were principal recommendations for teachers to be a part of that academy, to review our curriculum, make recommendations that will be ongoing work. We had a team to review our assessment calendar, provide input around those various assessments. We heard a lot from our high school principals around those testing, like I said, that testing in November, December, as you move into final exams at the end of a semester. Also professional learning around proficiency scales, curriculum-based adoption. If you recall, board members, you voted and approved a new ELA adoption. We've already started rolling it out. Concerns I heard from teachers was, getting back in August and getting a new adoption, and you see the heads shaking, the day, 2 days before school is starting, it does not afford us enough time. And we want that training to start. And so we've started rolling out that training this spring and also throughout the summer so that staff members can participate in that training if they choose to do so during their time in the summer, and they'll be compensated for that. Other changes, special education, as I said, is one area of needed growth for us district-wide around professional learning, ensuring that there's understanding around co-teaching. What is the role of a co-teacher in a classroom, IEP goals, how to write those goals, but then how to measure and monitor students' progress toward their goals. Also, compliance is another area that we want to make sure that we're always in compliance. We also reviewed the role of the Director of Special Education. We're dividing that into a K-5 director that will focus on elementary schools, a secondary director that will focus on secondary, and then our early childhood director, she will take over and focus on the early childhood or pre-K students. We're adding 3 additional special education classrooms at the elementary level, 1 additional classroom at the middle school level, 2 elementary behavior support classrooms, another middle school classroom, and 1 at the high schools. Once again, addressing the needs of students who have increasing needs around IEP support, partnering with local universities to recruit our special education teachers. One of the other concerns our principals shared and teachers was the turnover of process coordinators, those people who are processing and helping to establish those IEPs and working with building level teachers and principals and trying to keep some consistency of the people in those positions. And so we're going to be focused on that. Also, future work around student behavior. Once again, as I said, the work is not done. It's going to be ongoing and continuous throughout the course of the 24-25 school year. focus room exemplars, leader discipline calibration training, going back to ensuring that there's consistency with discipline across the school district. And so providing that training this summer for our principals. Establishment of district-wide site-based lessons, as we've heard. District-wide PBIS coach. We are repurposing a position and roles and responsibility for an individual to focus on PBIS and also conscious discipline. PBIS site budget. We heard from teachers and principals they want a budget. And so board members, I think in our first round of budget discussions, we talked about that. So there will be an actual identified budget. Classroom strategies, additional Dr. Hannigan will be providing training in September to our teachers. He's already provided training to our principals and counselors. Expand our impact classrooms. Also at McGregor, we are going to pilot a transitional K classroom next year. So students that are not truly ready for kindergarten, but they're in kindergarten, but they're going to be separated in a different classroom to receive those necessary academic supports that they need, starting with McGregor. One of the things I've heard from some board members is we spend a lot of time talking about what's working, but we don't hear about schools that are having challenges. McGregor is one of our most at promise elementary campuses in our district, meaning it has a number of challenges, but you've heard how they're starting to turn those challenges around. And so we're exploring that. There's a budget to that. You also heard Ms. Kirby talk about how they have different classroom and different personnel. And so board members' budgets are being assigned and addressed to specify to give positions to campuses that need those additional supports based on academic needs of students and also behavior needs of students. And finally, the professional learning work. You're going to hear from 3 or more colleagues, and we'll close it out tonight around Teach Forward Summer Trade Out. If teachers participate in training this summer, they'll have more time in their classroom on the Teach Forward Day back that week of first week in August when they're back. Well, not the first week, but first week that they're back. November choice learning, more choices. What we heard from teachers is you're pushing us all into one class. We want to have a variety of options. Model classrooms, they want to see model classrooms across the district. We're going to go visit. Board members, you're going to be on some field trips this next year, so get your walking shoes ready. The applications are already open. We're going through a process where we will identify those model classrooms. Once again, differentiation, you've heard me talk about that. Also collaboration across sites. Buildings want to visit their colleagues across the district to see what's working so they can take some of those ideas back and then lead forward aligned to the academic priorities. We're going to hear from our 3 teachers to talk about their work around professional learning and the future work. Katie, you're going to start? Okay.
I will go first. My name's First, so I teach first grade. You know, we all have to be first. There's this thing about being first. So I'm Katie Swisshelm. I teach at Fremont Elementary. I've been teaching first grade there for 17 years. This is my last year teaching first grade there. I'm switching to third grade next year. So when Curriculum Academy came about as an opportunity, as something for me to participate in, I threw my name into the hat because I told my principal I'd like to participate in this since I'm switching grade levels. And we're getting a new English language arts curriculum next year. So I wanted the opportunity to dive into the standards and really know those standards before I started teaching third grade. So that was one of the reasons that I wanted to participate in Curriculum Academy. So some of the things that I thought were strengths of Curriculum Academy, things that I really liked, I actually enjoyed that we did this in the evenings. As a teacher, it's really, really hard to leave your classroom. We co-teach at Fremont. We've got 40 kids in my first grade classroom. So walking away and leaving that first grade teacher then with a sub it's hard. You feel really bad. So being able to do it in the evenings even as a mom and there was childcare available. I did not utilize it, but I know there was childcare available. They fed us dinner. That was lovely. I didn't have to make my kids dinner. And we got paid a stipend, which is really great for putting in that time after we had been in our classrooms all day long. So those were some of the things that I liked, as well as I was given the opportunity to dive deeper into these new standards that I was going to be learning for third grade and how the new curriculum resource aligns with our standards. And just getting to look at those resources, touch them, flip through the book. You know, how deep does it go? How is the rigor there? I am a very, very, very standards-based teacher. If there is a standard that my kids need to know. I'm going to tell you what that standard is, and we are going to learn it up and down, front and back. And so I wanted the opportunity to also look at the new resource and make sure that that opportunity was there for my students too. I loved working with other teachers from across the district, sharing our thoughts and ideas, and then getting to know some others on the same grade level that I will be switching to. The individuals from the curriculum department that arranged Curriculum Academy worked very hard to get this out to teachers before August. So like Dr. Latham mentioned, we have seen some training videos, we know what's coming our way, and then as far as the scope and sequence, curriculum guides, those are still being finished up. But it's nice to have those in our hands before August so we can go in the first day and know what we're starting on. And then I knew my goals. Those were communicated to us very well every time we met. We knew what our goals were, what we were working on. So now I have some areas of growth, some suggestions to make for Curriculum Academy as it continues. So one of the things that I noticed was certain grade levels had too many teachers working on them. And that led to kind of, too many cooks in the kitchen type situation, a little bit of just bumping heads a little bit. And another thing I noticed was that you can't stay organized, you can't stay on task with your different jobs when you've got 8 or 10 people at a table trying to say who's going to fill in this lesson plan, who's going to write these supplemental lesson plans. And then through that process, it also made it a little bit evident that there were some teachers who maybe didn't know the standards to the depth that they should know them at. And so making sure that those teachers that are chosen by principals that know their standards, or the principals know that they're standards. So my suggestions are that when we do Curriculum Academy again, seeking the help of our coaches first, our learning coaches, to have them come in and maybe look at our new adoption, vet that new adoption as far as just looking through to see where are holes, where is the rigor not where we need it. Our coaches did see all of the resources before the teachers did, so they would know how to come in and look through those things. The coaches could look over the resources, the proposed curriculum guides, and determined if the resources meet the standards and the rigor that we expect as a district. My suggestion after that would be to reach out to principals and have them suggest teachers from their buildings that could come and be a part of the next step of Curriculum Academy to be writing supplemental lesson plans. For example, one of the lesson plans that we wrote some supplemental plans for the standard was main idea and key details. In third grade, you have to be able to identify the main idea of a passage and the key details, and you have to be able to go back to that passage and you have to prove it. You've got to prove yourself. So there weren't enough lessons, in my opinion, and so we wrote some supplemental lessons to go along with that. So just making sure that the teachers that are chosen know their standards and they know what needs to be done and what is expected. And then, like I said, just making sure that the principals are made and aware of advance. Curriculum Academy is going to be starting soon. Be thinking of teachers who are strong in lesson writing, who are strong in organizing curriculum guides. The curriculum guides need to be go in and we need to cut and paste and organize those things. Who could help us with those things? And then also as principals, check and make sure that people want to participate. If you keep it at night, make sure families have coverage, things like that. And that is all I have. Thank you. Your turn, Megan.
Yeah, ready. Okay, is that okay? All right, hi, my name is Megan Walcher. I am very excited to be here representing SPS Secondary Science and launch virtual education. I'm going to talk to you about my experience as a participant in Curriculum Academy. So just a little bit about me before I get started. I'm finishing my first decade in the district, which is very exciting to say out loud. When I typed this up, I was like, ooh, a whole decade. I've been a science teacher. I've taught everything from freshman intro classes to AP and dual credit. I spent 6 wonderful years at Parkview, so go Vikings. And I'm in my 4th year teaching full-time with our launch program. With them, I have the opportunity to teach not just SPS students, but the whole state. So really, really fun job. I've also been through the previous curriculum process, so I have a lot of things I like about this new process. So thank you, Dr. Holt, Dr. Lathan, for having me. I'm going to jump right in. I had 6 big things that I really liked, and then I have a couple suggestions moving forward. So first, kind of to echo Katie, I really like that it was outside of school hours. I'm also one of those people who hates missing a day of school. It's really stressful to be out. And with my job, that meant I got to continue being present online with my virtual students. I teach a lot of Zoom lessons, and I also support Glendale High School in their online placeholder classroom, so it was really important that I was in school during the day. I also appreciated getting fed. 3:45 to 6:45 is dinner time. I know it sounds funny, but having like a hot meal in front of you while you work is super important. I'm also a vegetarian. I'd be a bad vegetarian if I didn't tell the world. So I had nice dietary restrictions were in mind, and I really appreciated that. Childcare was huge for me. I am a first-time mom with a 5-month-old at home, so it was just really nice knowing that there was an option for me to have a safe space for my baby while I'm kind of balancing the 2 things I love most, which is now being a new mom and a teacher at the same time. Payment, of course, who doesn't like getting paid? It also just showed that you honor the expertise that us teachers bring to the table. Science is hard to write, so paying us for our time was very appreciated, and having that extra check will be really nice, so thank you for that. The other thing I really liked was the variety of voices. We really had a member from all the pillars of the SPS secondary team at the table. So we had Kickapoo, Central, Hillcrest, Parkview, and Glendale were all there, along with Studi and Launch. We really got to work together to what does quality science education look like, no matter the mode of learning. We know our students go back and forth from building to building, from Studi to Launch, back to Glendale, back to Launch. I mean, it happens. So having common curriculum is so important. So I really just appreciated being at that table with them. And last was the work process. Science teachers really, really love science. So it's kind of our thing. So it was really nice to have a place to honor our passion. We all got to kind of dump our ideas on the table. We got to say, oh, I love that lab, and really kind of fire us back up for the work. Because science teachers all have a favorite lab or a favorite activity. So it was really cool just to hear from our colleagues. We also looked at our standards, so we got to unpack them, which we haven't really had a lot of time dedicated to that, so it was nice to not just unpack them, but we literally put on student hats. We would like physically be like, we're in our student hat now, and we wrote I can statements, and just a shout out to Ann Wallenmeyer and Kim Redinger. They did a really great job at keeping data at the forefront. We used item specs, we used released items from DESE, and we really had a safe space to put students' hat on and remember the heart of the work that we're doing. So thanks for letting me brag about it. There's a lot of good things. And then these are just my suggestions if we continue with the process. So first, I'm all for keeping this model going. I do think it was super brain friendly to have the large chunks of time over consecutive weeks. We weren't having to kind of start, stop, what did we do 2 months ago? Wait, where's that Google Doc? Where's that folder? Really brain friendly to be like, oh, we just met last week, and here's all that information. So I would like to continue seeing the large chunks of time with consecutive weeks. Going on time, we needed more of it. Science only had 5 sessions, which we are trying to rewrite biology and earth science and the new freshman course. It's a lot in chemistry. It's a lot. So we actually had to already schedule more time in the summer. So I think maybe scheduling more time on the forefront. You always can maybe not use it at the end, but writing good curriculum takes a lot of time. And so 5 sessions just wasn't enough for us. And then for science, I wish we would have started earlier. We didn't actually get started until after spring break. So I think if we started earlier, you would really capitalize on the energy that the beginning of the year brings, right? People are excited and fresh and ready to go. March, April, and May can kind of be a harder time to really focus in on curriculum. So my suggestion is to start a little bit earlier, maybe. Thank you for listening. I'm really excited to see what science is going to look like. I'm grateful to be a part of the team that got to model this. I'm always happy to represent Launch, and I'm happy to be able to share it with you all today. And thank you for all you do for all of our students, whether they're seated in Studi online. There's a lot of them out there, so thank you for all the work you do.
Okay, the first thing I want to say is I'm kind of jealous of you linear people that type things out because I'm that abstract autism spectrum person that's like, no. So anyway, but that actually worked out really great because secondary ELA, it was beautiful. So we were pretty much in these rooms and we had 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Do you know how often we all get together and vertically plan? Never. Okay? So that was a beautiful experience right there, is we started out learning, and if you're in the room and you know ELA standards and you know ELA standards, they don't necessarily change a whole lot K through 12. It's that depth of knowledge that starts changing. And you add a few elements here and you add a few elements there. But it was that opportunity to, the very first thing Claire did was said, just talk. How do you guys approach this? How do you approach that? What do you do here? So learning, how did 6th grade possibly go about researching or comparing and contrasting or writing an argumentative essay? How did 7th do it? How did 8th do it? And having all of those different campuses. And I'm from Pipkin, by the way. I know I didn't introduce myself. See, there goes that whole thing again. So I teach 8th grade language arts. And we're an international baccalaureate school. So we don't necessarily do things the exact same way that every other classroom does. So that means I'm trying to pull in information on how every other campus does it, and then I've got to have in the back of my brain, how do I have to modify it to meet the IB? So that was a beautiful thing to start out with. The second thing we all noticed, all 3 grade levels, please no offense to whoever did this initially, but someone in the wise past decided that all the 1s would be taught during first quarter and all the 2s would be taught during second and all the 3s would be taught. And that's not how, based on your pedagogy, that's not actually how they're attained or learned. So we decided to go whoosh, and we etch-a-sketched it. And now we have an entire new layout based on the actual academic learning progression rate of students. And here's the other fun fact, folks. 6th grade does not have the same order as 7th grade and as 8th grade because we realized they gain those skills at different points and times. So that was a beautiful thing coming out of that academy. Then each team was tasked, unlike elementary, who has an actual hard textbook curriculum, we were like, no. We want to write lessons that are completely standards-based, and here are the options of the novels, the short stories, the nonfiction, the articles. So teachers have that agility to know what their curriculum is, what their classroom is. And are my kids ready for this novel? No, so let's start out maybe with this article. We're still teaching the standard because the lesson itself is being written with those elements, with that teach and model and that anticipatory and that guided and that adjustment and that independent. But it's all being done on, for example, RI1D. You have to know central idea and supporting evidence. That doesn't mean I have to teach it out of Anne Frank or I have to teach it out of Long Walk to Water. It means I have to teach it. Now, which text does it go best with? And where are my kids at? We also created spiral standards. We looked at those standards that at once upon a time had always been taught in 3rd quarter or 4th quarter, and we're like going, they need to know that long beforehand, but they're going to need it for this essay and this essay and this essay. So we're going to make these spirals. So like your writing process. You're going back and forth and through that 1,000,000 times over throughout the entire year. Why is it poked in this one spot? Just because somebody needed to fill up a space on a paper. So ELA is going to look really different. The other beautiful thing is all of these lessons are teacher created. This is not AI created. This is not a textbook that we bought from someplace out of the state that may not follow the Missouri learning standards, may not follow the same learning pattern that we know our kids developmentally need to. So this is all us. We own it. It's a beautiful experience. We've also delineated that every quarter, the kids need to be exposed to literature, informational, and writing. 3 units every single quarter. And they're not supposed to be all smooshed into one. You should be able to see an identifiable, discernible difference between when are you transitioning. Now, can they build on each other? Sure. That's a beautiful experience. But what happens is sometimes if we smush them all together, we end up with like, oh, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 25 million days that kids are trying to write a paper and they're just putting it off and putting it off. But if you actually create a writing unit, now they know, okay, so these are the 2 days we're going to work on drafting. Now we're going to do mini lessons on how do you edit a paper? Because guess what? We all think kids know how to edit a paper. They don't. I know adults that don't know how to edit a paper, okay? You think you've got it here, you put it there, and something fell apart in between there. So now we've created those mini lessons to actually teach those kids that step by step, so that by the time they're hitting Josh in Glendale or at Central or at Parkview, et cetera, they're not trying at that point to teach them how to write an essay and how to revise and edit. I would also say the nighttime was a beautiful thing, because no, I don't like leaving my kids because I feel bad for the sub, but I also don't like leaving my kids because Pipkin has a lot of kids with trauma, and they build that continuity with a teacher, and when I'm not there, peace be with whoever the sub is. And I don't care if it's Superman, they're still gonna give him a hard time because where's Miss Lightfoot? Why isn't Miss Lightfoot here? What happened to Miss Lightfoot? I mean, you have no idea the things I heard as I was trying to leave for 7th hour. They're like, where are you going? Why are you leaving us? I'm like, oh, sorry. The pay was nice. I won't lie, I'd have done it without the pay, because I like writing curriculum, and I like sharing what I know, and I like sharing what works. The one major thing I would kind of echo: be selective in who you choose. Continue with folks that want to continue it, that have experience. I don't think there was enough knowledge up front when they said curriculum academy and curriculum writing. I think you had some teachers that thought, oh, well, especially at the middle school level, I can't speak to yours because I wasn't at them, but I think there were several students in my group that thought, oh, we're going to get something physical, we're going to look at it, we're going to assess it, we're going to make decisions, and we're going to walk away. Not, hi, could you write 35 lessons by April 15th? What? Because we lost a lot of people at that moment. They were like, no, I'm out. So you have a small handful of individuals contributing. So again, vet, kind of have that conversation and make sure that they know the expectation is that's part of the stipend. Not just you get to set up and put your opinion out. If you just want to be on that opinion, then maybe do a different stipend for just that. But let them know if you're writing, and make sure that expectation is clear. And that's pretty much everything my little whoosh-wash brain has.
Thank you, ladies. Board members, do you have any questions of the teachers before we wrap it up? Okay. Thank you. Yeah, yes. Yes, oh, yes.
Okay. Is it just for the teachers?
Yeah, we'll take care of them, and then you can ask me whatever you need to ask me.
Oh, I don't really have a question. I guess I have a comment. I like curriculum. Everybody knows it's super important. I want to just say thank you for giving us details. It helps me process and helps me understand. And I came tonight already excited about ELA K-5, and now I'm so excited about ELA 6-8 because that's a huge deal. So thank you. And writing our own curriculum can be very powerful because we know our students and what works best to deliver for them. And I guess my questions were really, I guess they were on the other slides. So that's it. I just had a comment, so.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you. I know you need to go, so thank you. Thank you for being here with us this evening. Oh, no problem, no problem. And thank you for the feedback. We appreciate it. Board members, other questions you have before I wrap us up?
I had a few questions.
Okay.
I'm trying to find I closed out. Can you go to slide 67? Do we go that many slides up?
Yes.
Hold on, I got to get there myself.
67 or 60?
67. I got to get there
Okay.
myself, too.
Okay.
Okay, so EBS, I'm trying to understand the difference between ISC and EBS and relate those to impact classrooms. So
So let's start with impact classrooms. So those impact classrooms, sounds a little loud. The impact classrooms are for students without an IEP. No IEP
So
They-
reg ed classes.
Yes, they're reg ed classes, but they're students that are exhibiting major behavior challenges. And they need to be in a separate classroom to focus, to address those behaviors, and also to make sure we get them on track academically. And so that's when you heard Ms. Kirby talk about, they had some students, even at the elementary level, that were there, and they found out some students still needed to then go through the referral process for special education. Others were able to make those necessary behavior adjustments to learn academically. So we started the impact classrooms at several of our middle school campuses this past year to be able to keep those students on their campus but separated.
So some middle schools
Yes,
have it?
yes, some middle schools have it. So that was back.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
So that's not this slide, okay.
No, that
Because
is
I'd heard that word,
slide-
and I wasn't sure if that was the I in ISC, but it's not.
Slide 12.
Okay.
ISC intensive support class.
Yes, I wasn't sure where the I was. Okay, so impact is for reg ed, and it's only for middle school.
It was at middle school this past year, what we actually identified them as impact classrooms. At elementary, we tried something similar, but we did not call them an impact classroom. It was just a classroom where we made the necessary supports that they needed. For example, you heard her say at McGregor, she has a behavior interventionist and a para in her focus room. So every school is just a slightly different with staffing.
Impact is,
Student support room in
Yes,
addition to.
she had a student support room and then her focus room, right? She has 2 rooms because of the needs of that
okay, so
particular
the impact
campus.
classroom is where the tier 2 or maybe
I'd say tier 2 and tier 3,
PBIS.
more
The
tier 3.
Got it.
But, and goes back to, and that's how we identified, once again, these were budgetary decisions that we made where we added the additional staff for those classrooms, or those campuses, based on the needs of those campuses, based on referrals, based on academics, but based on those issues.
So then this is special ed.
This is special ed, students that have an IEP.
Right, and the difference between EBS and ISC, because we have one EBS middle and then one ISC.
Or students with severe behavior disorders.
Right, so EBS is emotional behavior
Behavior support.
and ISC is,
Intensive support class.
so they're just different
They're
classrooms?
different classrooms, yes. So focus on behavior. So you think about your behavior supports. So focus on students with those severe behavior problems.
That's EBS?
That's the EBS classroom.
ISC
And
is-
ISC, students with more academic challenges and experiences.
Got it. And then these are the additional rooms, or this is the total?
These are additional,
Oh,
that's what I'm
these are
saying. These are additional based on referrals and students that have identified IEPs that are calling for those additional supports and needs. And so we're also strategically placing them across the district. So students don't, if you think about travel, so they're a little bit closer maybe in their feeder pattern. They might not necessarily be at their particular home elementary campus or middle school campus, but that's why. And so we're seeing that need.
This can be scattered?
Yes.
Throughout, okay.
And we already have these classrooms across the district, but like I said, these are additional ones.
Got it. So then on the very next slide, this was really exciting.
What,
'cause
60s?
The next slide,
Uh-huh.
yeah. I didn't, maybe I'd missed this, the elementary pilot transitional.
At
kindergarten.
McGregor.
So that's just going to be piloted at McGregor?
Right now, we're McGregor. We're finalizing based on assessment results and information from our elementary campuses.
We did it this year, you mean?
No, we are doing it next year. We started a little bit of it, but we're truly defining and making it more formalized at McGregor for next year. That was one identified campus. Also, a couple other campuses, we're looking at that. We've also aligned a budget for our bottom 5% or most challenging campuses. We'll have an additional budget for staff support and professional development this summer, and additional opportunities throughout the course of the school year where teachers will be paid to participate in professional development beyond the school day.
Okay, so this, and I guess I'm trying to understand what transitional kindergarten is. So back in the day, there were the kids that went to half-day kindergarten, then they went to full-day kindergarten.
Transition says I've completed the school year, but academically, based on the assessment results, I'm truly not on grade level ready for first grade. And so I'm going to remain in a kind of in between. It's like a K1, I want to call it a K1 class. I'm
So
not.
this comes after kindergarten?
It comes after kindergarten.
I was thinking it came before kindergarten. Oh, so this comes after kindergarten. And since, from a budgetary perspective.
It's a classroom elementary teacher,
Yeah, it's
certified
still-
elementary teacher.
So we still get, these are attendance, these are still students.
Yes.
So I'm just going to make this up. Let's say somebody repeats 10th grade 3 times, right? But it's still a grade.
They still count. I mean, we still
They
receive.
still count.
Yes.
Okay. So it's, all right. That was, and I think I had just one more question.
Did I miss anything? I was trying to, Nicole, did I miss anything? Okay.
Well, you answered my impact question. Okay. Nope, I don't have any questions, but I do have, if I can make a real quick comment. I heard the words actionable changes, and I was like, yes. Did I hear you correctly? So, again, we're going to have opportunities to learn more because I find it very valuable. You said there's going to be field trips for model classrooms, but did you also say when the SPED 101, you said we're going to bring the board along? Does that mean that we're going to get to take those courses?
You're going to go to class? Yes, we're going to do it as part of course, it has to be with everyone. We'll have it, but you'll receive that information. I think it's important to do that.
Thank you.
Yes.
The climate and culture survey, when that link is sent to us Friday, will we have access to the full thought exchange?
Yes, just like you received, when we did the strategic plan, you'll see everything. Yes.
Thank you. That was really helpful. EBS, I had an opportunity to kind of learn a little bit more about this in the last 2 weeks because it was another acronym that I was not very familiar with. What is the goal right now of EBS, of our EBS classrooms? What are we trying to accomplish with those?
So the goal when a student is in an EBS classroom, they have an IEP. And the goal of not necessarily the classroom, the goal is to meet the needs of that individual student. So based on what's outlined in their IEP. And so then there are goals written. So for a student has an IEP, and that's what we're going to, as you go through the training, you're going to be able to see what an IEP looks like. You'll see what the goals, and then how we monitor and update those goals, normally quarterly for students. So the goal is the IEP calls for a student needing that separate classroom, needing that separate place with a teacher. Most times it's a paraprofessional. There can be some other related services that they might need. It could be a social worker. It could be speech services. But it just depends on that individual student. So those students that have an IEP are in that particular classroom.
So these classrooms, there's a few across the district. And so in most cases, a student will move from their home school to that classroom, wherever that may be.
Yes.
So if they're in an elementary school A, they would go to elementary school B, potentially for this EBS classroom, and they get transportation there, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then, so I guess what would success look like in most cases? Is that moving them, trying to move them out of that, or is this a stay there situation? Is it move them out and back to their home school? Does it vary?
It varies, but that's a great question. So success would be stepping that student down, that they don't need a separate classroom. So they would be in an inclusion classroom. And so they could still be EBS and have that label, but they could be inside of a classroom, so inclusion. So in their IEP would say inclusion, but it might say 60 minutes per week they're going out to meet with a behavior interventionist. So success is always stepping a student down to the least restrictive environment. When they're in an EBS classroom or other separate classroom, that's kind of the most restrictive. And so the goal is least restrictive.
Are we being successful in stepping down?
Some students we are, and others, there are some students that will continue to need a separate classroom, and they might need that separate classroom their entire school career, all the way up to high school and graduation. It depends on the severity or the needs of that individual student. Because like I said, that's why it's called an individualized education plan. So some need separate and most restrictive, others do not.
So is the building leader, I guess, just like they lead the rest of the buildings, is responsible for an EBS classroom, just like they are for an English classroom or whatever, right?
Correct.
Is their structure, I guess, their leader, as they need assistance, is that differentiated? Would they go elsewhere than they would for issues they would have with English?
Yes, and so that's the great question that you just asked. Let me get to it. Let's see here. Let me go back. This is why we've made this change with special education, is instead of having one director that is K-12 that's been trying to respond, and that person does have people working with them, we're dividing it by having a K-5 elementary special education director. Well, really, our early childhood person is going to focus on those 4 years and under special education students, elementary K-5 special education director, and a secondary to be able to provide more support. One of the things I also missed was the instructional coach where you see for special education. That was another request that came from our teachers and principals through Superintendent Solutions, having someone with that specialness, that specialty background to be able to come in and go into their classrooms and provide that support. Be able to help them understand the goals that are written on an IEP and, okay, how do I make a modification? How do I make an adjustment to my particular lesson to be able to meet those needs?
Okay. So on the transitional kindergarten, that's something I look forward to hearing more about and how that goes if we do pilot that. Yeah, I would, I guess, have some questions about that would naturally require funding. So I'm curious how we
if you recall,
how we fund that.
Right.
What, like, if that was a program we decided to expand, what does that look like? How do we do that?
It's a FTE. So if you remember when we talked in our small budget meetings, and we'll talk again in a couple of weeks, remember when you saw that list of here are the numbers where we've reduced, but these are the ones that some schools are getting these positions. Those are those FTEs. So that's the budgeting is assigning an FTE or an additional FTE to a particular campus. That could be the transitional classroom. It could be a behavior interventionist. It's an SEL. We talked about that. York and Man, oh no, they're sharing, York is gonna get an SEL next year. So remember we talked about some of those campuses based on those needs when principals came in and presented the needs of their campuses in January when they did those portfolio reviews. So that's where we're making those decisions on that budget sheet of saying this is how we budget that. So, and remember when you come back, we said we were going to talk about that a little bit more. And actually, McGregor is one of the campuses you're going to look at that authorized. Remember, I talked about an authorized position report where we look at what are those needs, what are those other additional resources. And so that's the example there.
I find that very interesting. I'd like to learn more about it. Just I've expressed to some other board members, I think, it seems very intuitive when we talk about what we can do with the limitations of a budget. I mean, it's just not reasonable to look across the district and say, let's just reduce classroom sizes by X number, right? I mean, salaries and benefits is such a massive portion of the pie. What is it, 80% or something, right?
Yes.
So to make a, say, 10% impact on classroom sizes across the district is, 20-some million dollars. It's massive, right? We can't do that. So this idea of how we can be really intentional and surgical about where we can put some of that FTE or whatever, where maybe it's needed most, and an idea like this transitional kindergarten, where we can funnel that into, say, really that youngest K through 3, where we can really set them up for success moving forward and really be impactful with those dollars, I think is really interesting to me for things of setting kids up for success by helping with behavior situations and academic situations, because I think we can see the most return on that by really impacting them prior to 3rd grade. So I'm really interested to see how that works out and hope that there's room to continue to be creative and thoughtful about doing programs like that. So this, what you've presented to us today, and there's so much information, so I'm trying to whittle it down into something I can put on a piece of paper in my mind, like bullet points. So that, this is the plan. These are the things, because a lot of what we heard is this is what I promised last year. These are how we kind of did those things, and then and then we move into, here's a bunch more things we're gonna be doing this year, and it all just kind of jumbles up. And if I can see it in like a, hey, here's what's different, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, that is really helpful. So is this the plan as we move into next year, or is this a update and there's still anything else coming? Is there anything else that you're anticipating coming as it relates to student behaviors that we can address prior to next year and implement prior to next year, or is that what this is?
That's what this is, but also I think in and understanding my work and the work of my team is the work is ongoing. And so when I think about it from a business standpoint, putting your business hat on of, okay, this is the plan. We have a list of activities, as you see from the future work, things that we're going to work on. At the same time we're working on this whole list of future activities, we're doing our day-to-day work, and we're still working, but we're responding to the data. We haven't gotten the final achievement data. We haven't finalized the discipline data. That'll go all the way up to May 23rd. And then there will be other updates. Remember, in August, when we get back together again, we will have an update of here's what we've accomplished this summer. Here is the plan, to use your term, but that's what we will do. But that is ongoing. And I think the disconnect is, and I've been trying to process this, for how to, that our team can also show you through the budget. The budget is the plan. So when we create a budget and when we are presenting to you saying this is what we want to do for salaries and benefits, this is what we want to do for all these various programs, that's the plan. Then part of that is working the plan. But sometimes the plan, and when you work a plan, you're doing 5 steps, other times you're doing 10. It just depends. And so what you have to do is trust the process to understand when you hear the people who are on the boots on the ground is we're responding based on what they need. But you didn't hear Ms. Kirby or Dr. Groves say the same thing. They develop things for their campuses. What we do is we plug in and say, you've had a problem here on this particular campus with XYZ. Based on experience, here are the things we think you need, and this is how we're going to support you. And that's what we did here with Glendale. You heard him say, Dr. Nguyen comes out, she's doing this, XYZ. With Ms. Kirby is Dr. Masterson. They're going out, and based on the academic data, based on our meetings from our professional learning communities and time, we're saying you need to address this on this particular campus. That's why, because I really want to dig in to make sure people understand that what happens at McGregor is not going to be the same that happens at Wanda Gray. But Wanda Gray has also its own set of challenges also that we're working to address, because I'm talking about 2 different schools on 2 different academic ends of the spectrum, right? We have an at-promise school that's up and coming, as you can hear, but she has to have time to work that. And her team they must have that time. Same thing at Wanda Gray, she's working on challenges that she has to deal with. That's the plan when we set those, we create those school budgets. But like I said, having it in a future thing is how we laid out future work. So we're saying these are the things that we're going to do. This is what you're going to hold me accountable for as it relates to improving outcomes for students across our entire district. So, quick thing. Board members, you heard 4 big hot topics today. Curriculum assessment, student behavior, professional learning, and special education. I want you to select one of those topics and tell me which one resonates with you or which one do you have more questions or wonderings around. And I'll start with you, Steve. Okay, curriculum. Kelly? I just want you to tell me of those 4 things that you heard today, which one of these topics do you have more questions about, wonderings, or just your interest is just piqued about it? Curriculum and assessment, student behavior, professional learning, and special education. Student behavior. Sharita?
All of them, so.
You only choose one.
I know. Curriculum and assessment.
Okay. Sir, I'm going around. Raise your hand. Okay, Danielle.
I'm with Dr. Thomas Tate. You're asking a learner to identify one.
Yes.
I will choose professional learning.
Very good. Judy?
I like all of them too, but the professional learning.
Okay. Susan? Okay. Oh, this is good, Miriam. I know you are. Student behavior. Okay. All right, so we have curriculum assessment. That's Steve and Sharita. Student behavior, Kelly and Miriam. Professional learning, Danielle and Judy. Special education, Susan. So here's your assignment, my dear friends. You are going to work with me collaboratively throughout the course of the next year on that particular area that you're assigned to. We'll get together, we'll talk about that. You will be a part of these presentations moving forward for your assigned area. So we'll be getting back to, yeah. And I'll get to ask the questions, and I will be given an assignment and a grade. Yes. I'm not accepting applications at this time. But we will go through a process together, but we will spend time, as we talk about looking at some of the model classrooms, we'll spend time digging a little bit deeper. But once again, all board members seriously will receive the information through the board meetings, because everything is a public meeting, but we will spend some time together, making sure that you have that information so you can help co-teach with, to your board members around these subjects. So did we capture all of that? Brett, did you make my list? You'll normally make my list without, you know how to do these things on a piece of paper. They laugh at me because I end up losing them later. So, all right, so we will definitely follow up. But our goals, like I said, throughout the course of the year, we'll come back when we talk in the small budget meetings, board members in May. We'll dig a little bit deeper in the budget. We will then have an academic update in August. And then throughout the course of the year, school year, I'll talk about that time for the special education, because like I said, it's in as many people as possible that can participate in the board training around special education. I would like for you to consider participating. All right, any other questions, board members? Thank you for your time today.
And we're not done.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and we're not done. We are close on time. Yes. Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break. Yeah, 5:16.
There's food over there.
I did, yeah.
About 7 o'clock?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. It's like growling cats over here.
Did you want to do the minutes? That was next.
No, no.
Okay.
We're gonna skip it.
Okay.
Okay. Time is 5:19, and we're gonna go ahead and get started. Ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna go ahead and get started this evening, restarted this evening. In the interest of time and to respect our guests' behavior, we're going to move past the discussion on time limits of debate that was scheduled on our calendar this evening, and we'll bring that up at likely the next board meeting. So we have Catherine Whitaker and Susan Goldhammer here with MSBA, and ladies, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Hopefully, oh, yep, my mic's on. Great. Hi, guys. Happy to be back. I brought a partner, my partner in crime with me, Susan. So I want to start off with where we left off last time, okay? So at the end of the last session, I had you guys write on Post-its, I think, and then I collected them all. And I asked you all, what does the board need to do / work on moving forward? And this is what you all said. So take a second, look through that. Does this still kind of apply, do we feel? I'm gonna hand out the prints in a second. I'm just trying to get through the first 6 slides and then I'll give you. I have like surprises that I'm trying to keep a secret.
And Catherine, I should tell you, we do have one.
I know.
Board. Okay. new
Yes.
Board member.
I know. And so this is for you too, so you can kind of see what everybody said. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So hopefully this still rings true to some degree, because this is what we're going to focus on tonight. Okay, so I want to make sure that we are working to improve ourselves. I want to make sure that we understand the roles of boards, that we understand collective and individual roles and responsibilities, collective authority, to make sure we're listening to one another, and then to stop feeding into that perception of division. Okay, and the reason that I know that we have a new board member is I watched your reorganization meeting twice. Once on double speed, and once like normal speed. And there was one word that was said, and the reason I watched it a second time on double speed is there was this one word that I heard over and over and over and over and over and over, and I wanted to count how many times every single one of you said it. It was said like 22 times, and this was the word that all of you said that you wanted. That's what I heard, over and over and over from every single one of you. And so that's kind of what I want to focus on tonight, is this word, figuring out how do we unite and come together. I heard come together a lot as well. I heard a lot of discussion about like, we need a leader to bring us together, a leader to bring us together, a leader to bring us together. Leaders help, for sure, absolutely yes. But you have to decide whether you want to come together. This was said by a board member during the meeting too. This board will unify when all the board members decide they want to be unified. And that's the truth. That's what this comes down to. Susan and I can rally you guys and talk as much as we want, and we can try to guide you all in the best direction possible, but the choice is yours, and yours alone. And it's all 7 of you, which is that whole collective authority piece. And so that's what we really kind of want to focus on tonight. But I want to make sure that every time I come, if I'm invited back, that we do something to unite you all, okay? And so I want to start off with this, and I'm going to sit down for this because I like this to be like a coming together kind of thing. But I do this with boards because sometimes I think we forget that we're like people outside of being a board member. And I think we forget that we all have different like histories and pasts and things that make us special and bring us to the table together. And so this is selfishly even specifically for me because I don't know about any of you at all. But I want us all to share. There's 3 questions, okay? And I'm going to share 2. So the first is I want to know where you guys grew up. So I'll share. I was born in Jefferson City, Missouri. My parents were principals there, but then I moved to Indiana when I was 4, and so I grew up in Indiana. And I went to Mizzou, and that's how I'm back in Missouri. But anyways, I grew up in Indiana. What was your family makeup? So my family, I'm really lucky. I'm the oldest of 3, and my parents are still together. So I had a dual parent household, and that's how I grew up. And then what was the most difficult / important challenge I faced as a child? I was super blessed, had a really amazing childhood. I was kind of an idiot high schooler and made friends with people I should not have made friends with, which is why I chose to leave Indiana and go to Mizzou where I knew nobody so I could try again. And so that was just hard to go from, having people around me that I knew to go somewhere and start over where I didn't know anybody. So that was probably the most difficult thing. And we'll just go around in a circle. A microphone. Sorry.
Well, I have a question. Why is the slide deck different?
What do you mean?
What's happening here?
The original slide deck that I guess we received Thursday or Friday. When we did the agenda on Friday, we uploaded it. So that was, and then there were changes made.
And you'll have those PowerPoint slides too.
Yeah, I didn't receive an email saying that there was a shift in the contents. So I looked at this Saturday. This was not there. It had like boxes in different colors and, this kind of was there, not quite like this.
I was going to say, this is exactly
this was
from
there,
the other PowerPoint.
But, I'm just, the first 4 slides, and I'm just looking at this and this is all new.
Sorry.
We made changes. Yeah. We made changes, yeah.
But nobody told us,
Yeah.
or told me, I guess.
We will take responsibility for that. Catherine and I got together and decided we would rearrange some stuff. I had an opportunity to watch the organization meeting, so conversation, we decided to rearrange.
Switch some things around.
Okay.
Is that gonna be okay?
I guess.
We'll give
I don't
you
have a
the-
choice, do I? I'm not sure this is going to be helpful. I don't know where you're trying to go with this.
So I kind of set it up. Remember, I just want to get to know you all, and you said you wanted to unite. And I think a piece of us helping to unite and build trust among each other is to see each other as human beings outside of a board member. So that's why we're doing this. If you don't want to participate, we can go ahead and pass to the next person. That's totally fine.
Well, I just... Why don't I not go first?
That's okay.
Would that be all right?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
I was born in Springfield, lived here all my life. I've got 2 brothers and 2 sisters, so 5 kids. Both my parents are now deceased. What was the most important challenge? I had a blast as a kid. We had the most incredible neighborhood with 42,000 kids. We had 5 mothers who stayed at home. And so I had five mothers who I consistently got in trouble with. And they all took turns so that on Monday we were at the Clarks, and Tuesday we were at the Collars, and Wednesday we were at the Franskas. And so our mothers were only on duty one day a week, but they had tons of kids. Challenges. I do remember I attended Catholic schools first through 6th grade. And I went to Pershing. I didn't have to wear a uniform, and I could wear slacks. It was great. But I also dropped my lunch tray. And so I remember dropping my lunch tray in the cafeteria and pretty much, just went through the snack line after that. So.
Great, thanks.
I'll apologize, Miriam, for not letting you know that it changed. I really didn't even think about that, to be honest, but it's obvious that I should have. So it's really my responsibility that you didn't get told. So I'm sorry. I was born here in Springfield in Mercy Hospital, St. John's, one of the first babies born there, actually. I have 2 older brothers. One's deceased, passed away of COVID. The other one lives in Little Rock. Both my parents were together, I think, our whole lives, and I, too, had a very nice childhood. The only expectation was that I go to college because my parents had not, and it was never even discussed in my household that I wouldn't finish college. You don't quit till you're finished, and so that was the environment I was raised in, and I feel very fortunate. The biggest challenge, I don't know, we didn't have Title IX sports in those days, and Susan and I went to high school together. Our only options were be a Scotty in the drum corps, be a cheerleader. I wasn't cut out for either one, or play intramurals, and that would mess up my hair of a morning, so I didn't get to play sports in high school. There you go. And I would have loved it.
I was born in San Jose, California. My parents grew up in Missouri, and they moved back to Missouri when I was 8 years old, and I grew up in Raymore, Missouri, South Kansas City area. I have a younger sister who's 2.5 years younger than me and completely opposite from me. My parents were married on leap year day in 1980, so they just celebrated their, what would that have been, 44th? Yes, or 11th anniversary. My father, unfortunately, is ill with dementia, so we struggle with that as a family. The most difficult challenge I faced as a child, probably self-confidence, just trusting myself and knowing that I could get through, which, now I overcompensated, and, now I'm a type A personality.
Sorry, I was chewing. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, a tree hugger. I grew up with my mom and my stepfather and my brother. My brother's younger than me. He's an educator also. My mother is a retired corrections officer, and my stepfather is a pastor. So I grew up as a preacher's kid. The most difficult challenge I grew up with in the 80s and 90s on the West Coast, and so there were a lot of gangs and drug issues, and with my parents and their jobs, they were involved with a lot of drug and alcohol rehab programs and youth programs that were dealing with gang violence. And so, unfortunately, I experienced a lot of gang violence death, where my parents were doing funerals for a lot of my friends who didn't make it through past 8th grade. So that was challenging.
I grew up in Springfield. I have had 2 parents and 2 brothers. And as far as the third question goes, I guess, prefer not to answer it. I'm not sure why that would be helpful in this setting. I'm more focused on taking control of our lives and our futures than reliving a past, and I don't think it's appropriate to discuss here. So I've had opportunities to gather socially with except Susan. She's new. We'll get there. But to talk about things, I know that, I don't know how real we want to get here, but I know Steve, Miriam, Sharita can certainly really speak to 3. I don't know what that's going to do to anything.
Well, I grew up around the world. I lived in Europe, I lived in Asia, learned to speak different languages when I went there in order to adapt. We had 7 children in our family until age 9, when we all got separated and I went to a foster home. And prior to the foster home, my challenge was just trying to get out of the house so I wouldn't get beaten by my father. You asked for it, you got it. It's not a good thing to talk about. But the other challenge was being in a foster home at the age of 9, being able to overcome a lot of things that would help me become the person I am today, to get an education, graduate college, retire out of the Navy, and actually, at this point, I wanted to be on the school board. Actually, I'm going to say this, that there's a lot of kids out there that need a lot of help. I think I have a lot of background. I have a skill set that can actually help the children within the school system, the educators within the system, and support Dr. Lathan in achieving our strategic plan.
All right, thank you guys for participating. I'm going to pass it over to Susan. Okay, and I'll pass out the slides so you guys have them too.
Okay, so one of the things that we were asked to come chat about is probably one of the more difficult things about being on the school board. And we just had elections. You guys aren't the only ones that had elections across the state. We had elections. And I've been at MSBA since 1999, and so I've been through a lot of elections. And I've been through a lot of board training. I recognize some of you from board training. And April, May, June is usually a rough time for a lot of school boards and school board members. And one of the reasons why, it's not just that everything's new and that, as you point out, everyone uses acronyms that, and they forget to tell you what those mean, because that's a common problem too. But one of the reasons is that you just spent, I don't know how many months, running for school board and telling folks, vote for me, and if you really got into good conversations with them, which I know in districts this size, you have lots of forums and you have lots of opportunities, lots of interviews with the media and those kinds of things. You talk about, what am I going to do? What do I want to do? What do I want to do? What do I want to do? And that is our election cycle. It really is. But then you find out that you're on a board. You got elected and you had your party and you get sworn in, and then you realize that you're on a school board, and you always knew you were running for school board because it was right there on your sign, but the whole being on a board is something that is not a common experience, okay? There are actually very few school board members, people that run for school board, that have ever been on a governance board. So they are used to, and my school board members are amazing because they are can-do people, okay? You don't run for a board of the biggest school district in the state and not be a can-do person. And they have, I'm sure that if I looked at your vitas or resumes, you'd have all kinds of accolades of things that you yourself have done, but then you get on a board with all these other can-do people, and you have to work together, or you have to diplomatically work to get things done. So all of the things that you thought you were going to do, you then realize, oh, I can't do it by myself. I've got to work with the other people. I've got to convince them that this should be a priority. I've got to use those diplomatic skills and that maybe are a bit rusty, to convince them that this should be a priority, or this is the way that we should vote, and this is what needs to happen. And it's not just in the school board realm. I picked up some other pretty common. I am not a sports person, okay? So the fact that I know who this woman is a big deal, all right? So Caitlin Clark, big deal, right? Heard about her. And the draft. So we just went, not just with this, but the NFL draft, if you're more of a football person, right? These folks, their faces are on the front of the newspaper. They're negotiating these contracts with ungodly amounts of money. But then all of a sudden, they are on a team. Okay, and I've always wanted to, never had the opportunity. I always wanted to pull Andy Reid aside. I always wanted to have an opportunity to talk to, particularly those really high level team coaches. How in the world do you do that when people are paying thousands of dollars to go see that person, when that person has negotiated a salary, and yet you've got to mold these folks into a team, okay? And you know that there's got to be some pretty big heads in those locker rooms. But this is another example of collective authority. We elect our senator. This is one of our two senators, obviously. This is Senator Hawley. But Senator Hawley gets sent to D.C. once he won his election, and now he's got to work with the whole Senate, okay? He is just one vote in the whole Senate. And so the skills that it takes to get elected are frequently very different than the skills that it takes to actually accomplish what you want to get done or the reasons that you ran for school board, okay? And so I have a lot of, we get a lot of new board members that are getting trained this time, and we have a lot of conversations with them about you have to learn how to get along together, okay? And the appropriate way to get things done, like your priorities done. Okay, so just to point out, because I am one of the attorneys at the Missouri School Boards Association, and so all of my slides look really boring like this, is state statute recognizes collective authority, okay? There is no state statute that says a board member can do X, Y, and Z. Everything in the statute talks about a majority of the board that constitutes a quorum, a majority of the board votes for contracts and teacher employment. The school board of the district makes all the needful rules and regulations. There's no part of the statute that talks about individuals. The school board can suspend or expel students. The school board has the care and keeping of all the property belonging to the district. Each school board shall prepare annually a calendar for the school term. The Board of Education in all districts may employ a superintendent. And so this system is set up, and I don't know, a lot of board members don't realize this, but school boards are created by state statute. So you are not in, the Missouri Constitution talks about how we will have a free public education in Missouri, but how that gets done is created by the legislature. And so the legislature has set up, we have statutes, obviously, legislative statutes that set out the requirements to be on the school board, when you're elected, the terms that you serve, and the power that you get is from the state legislature. And that's one of the reasons why we tell, and I was glad to hear that you guys have legislative priorities, those kinds of things, because it is important to stay tuned to the legislature, because what they have created, just because you all have been around for a while, school districts have been around for a while, the legislature could just decide, nope, we're not interested. We're just going to tell you what, we'll just do vouchers for the whole state. We'll just hand out, every parent gets a check, and that's how you're going to educate, and you go figure it out yourselves. They could do that, okay? But they've chosen not to. And so my question to you is, why? Why collective authority? This is a couple of court cases have also come out and made it pretty clear. Unless otherwise authorized by the board, individual members are not empowered to act and cannot govern, okay? So y'all govern together. Whether you like it or not, you govern together. So the question is why? Why was the system set up this way? Any ideas? Okay, can you explain a little bit? Okay, good. Any other ideas? Yes.
Well, one thing I've noticed about this board is each of us brings a different level of expertise to the conversation, which I think makes us a stronger group together than we are individually.
All right, good. Any other thoughts? A team always accomplishes more than an individual. I like that spirit. Says the coach. Yes, 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 yes. Any thoughts? Nope, nope, nope. So, yes, I think this was very intentional. Okay, how the legislature set up boards, the school board, and it's not just us. We've also have city councils, for example. We've got county commissions. You know, it's never one person that does it all. All right, and I think that is truly based on our, the foundation of the United States, which, our U.S. Constitution, we're famous for these checks and balances, right? So no one person holds the key to everything. It's also the theory, I think, is our founding fathers were very famous for this because, they all got together, and I cannot envision what that meeting was like. I listened to the teachers talk about creating their curriculum, and can you envision getting everybody together and saying, okay, now we got this country. How are we going to put it together? And if you do your research, if you've done your history, there were years of wrestling with these really difficult issues. And once they got a constitution, they immediately passed a bunch of amendments to address a lot of the concerns, okay? But this is really the United States. We believe in, however uncomfortable it might be at any given time, we all get together and we talk and we listen and we fuss sometimes, and then we talk some more and we get it wrong and then we fix it, but we keep doing it. And that is why the system is set up this way. It is also why the system is really frustrating. Okay, it's frustrating to my new board members. It's frustrating to my veteran board members. It is a frustrating system, but it takes work from individuals. It takes diplomacy. Okay, it takes some forethought. It takes the ability to apologize and correct, okay? Obviously, I think some of you probably have touched on these, but the challenge is the entire board doesn't agree, and you might be in the minority, okay? I get so many calls from school board members saying, if they would just listen to me, and then I have to turn it on them and say, what have you done to start that dialogue other than get very frustrated? What have you done to open up the dialogue so that the rest of the group is willing to listen to you? Or have you listened to them? Have you modeled what you want them to do for you? And that is, and for all of you doers, it's really difficult, okay? Because you're used to coming in and commanding a room, and you're used to getting stuff done. And so working in a group is hard, okay? Patrons and voters believe that you have individual authority. Okay, so that's another huge one that we cover a lot in training. You've got parents maybe are coming up to you and saying, solve my problems. You might have staff members calling you and saying, solve my problems. And you are doers, right? So you want to do, you want to help, and you forget that you are governing a system. And you can't help people leapfrog the system, okay? You got to make sure the system's running well. And that's why we have, we refer things back to the staff. But that is difficult. District staff think you have individual authority as well, okay? And that works in a couple of different ways. On one end, they want to come to you, and they want you to fix their problems with their supervisors, perhaps. It also is a challenge because you can walk into a school function and scare the poo out of staff members because they don't see you as a person or as a board member. They see you as the entire board. And you have an invisible hat on that no matter how hard you try and take it off, that staff do view a board member. Oh my gosh, a board member's in the building. Why is a board member in the building? Oh my gosh, they're in my classroom. They're in my. That is a challenge that you also have as well because you are viewed as having power as an individual when in reality you don't. It's difficult or less efficient to act collectively than as an individual. And like I said, the you doers, it's like, oh, why do I have to explain myself? Why do I have to have this dialogue? Why do we have to go through this? Why won't they just listen to me? And that's difficult. And then we also, lack of teamwork or diplomacy skills. And quite honestly, I don't think particularly these days, people are practicing those diplomatic skills. It is very valuable to have. I have to admit, I am not the best at it because I am a doer, and I am, trying to talk someone into walking with me, as opposed to saying, "Here, just give me the controls. I'll do it myself." That is difficult to do. Okay, but I think it was very intentional by those that set up the system, is that we have to talk to each other so that we can walk together to get it done. You cannot do it all by yourself, even if you think that what you're doing is right, okay? We also have some consequences for violating collective authority. So I do have, this is the time of year where I do have new school board members in particular that, run into buildings and scare the poo out of staff, or they have an agenda item that they really, 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 really want addressed, and they want it addressed the very first meeting they're on the board, and there is serious frustration. So much so I've had, board members just quit. You're not going to listen to me, I'm not going to be here, and quit. And that obviously doesn't help at all either, okay? We tend to then have to have some interventions by the board president, the superintendent. It's super uncomfortable for the superintendent to be involved with these conversations. Sometimes other members of the board can be helpful if there's relationships within the board for sitting down with a board member and saying, listen, you can't go into buildings and scare the staff like that. And you do need to understand that this is a process and you got to work the process. This is the process that was set up by the legislature. We don't want to get into a situation where staff get, and I have had some districts where this has gotten, like somebody's calling staff constantly and demanding things from staff, and most staff just want to help anybody, really. And but I have had some school board members that have made some demands of serious time. And at that point in time, the staff is like, how do I say no to a board member? I'm overwhelmed at work already. Now I've got a lot more work to do. And so I have had to intervene on behalf of school districts and the staff to say, listen, we've got to set up some rules because an individual board member cannot ask for a 150-page report that's taking you a week away from your job. So that gets into it. The rest of the board stops listening. So when I have a board member that thinks that they are speaking for all of the public, and they insist that their way is the right way, then the rest of the board stops listening to them. And then they are even less likely to accomplish what they ran for the board for. And so we get into that kind of friction within the board meeting. And in extreme cases, and I have dealt with really extreme cases, and I know that this isn't Springfield, but I've had boards have to set rules, like you can't call this staff member anymore. I even had one poor fellow that we had to just ban him from school property for a little while because he was very much so being disruptive in the school buildings. And of course, those are extremely extreme cases because the vast majority of board members learn the skills. They figure it out. They watch the veterans. They go to board training. I do encourage you to go to board training. That helps. I think it helps to be in a room with other new school board members to talk through these things. And then I hope it helps if you were to talk to members of the Missouri School Boards Association. We can also help talk you through the process, just because we've had so much interaction with so many school boards, so many situations. But that's kind of the collective authority bit. Are there any questions concerns or comments about collective authority? No? Y'all feel like you got that pretty good? Okay, all right. If anything comes up, I'm going to hand it back over to Catherine.
Thanks. All right, so due to time, I was going to have you guys do an activity, but I cut it because I want to make sure that we end on time. So I want to talk about, since we've talked about collective authority, I want to make it very clear what a board member, singular board member, can do, and then what can the school board actually accomplish together. Put it in the wrong pocket. Okay. So a board member can, these are all totally appropriate, request board meeting agenda items. You all have a process for that? Working on it? A board member can make a motion or second a motion during a board meeting. I've seen you all do that. You can share your opinion during the discussion of motion. That's totally appropriate too. I've seen you guys do that. You can cast your vote, make sure it's based on data and facts, and that it's in the best interest of all district students. And then making sure that we respect the decision of the board, whatever's decided at a meeting. The second you walk out those doors, you're still backing that decision, whether you are on the winning side or the losing side of that vote. Because again, you are a collective, and when the collective speaks, doesn't matter what side you're on, the collective has spoken, you then have to defend the choice made by the board and support that choice made by the board, or else it kills trust. Okay, so what can a school board do? You guys can make decisions based on majority vote, hire superintendent and develop expectations for said superintendent, establish policies, approve/terminate contracts, hire/terminate staff, monitor how the district is doing, super important part of your job. So I want to talk about what this looks like during board meetings and outside of board meetings. So every single board member in the state of Missouri struggles staying in their lane. I promise you, every single one. And a lot of people struggle staying in their lane. They think it's like, malintention or, they're after somebody or whatever. I've come to realize that a lot of times the reason people struggle staying in their lane is just because they care. And they care a lot about whatever it is that they're after or working towards or fighting for. And so I think a lot of the reason that we do things or the reason we step out of our lane, whether it be during board meetings or outside of board meetings, again, is just because we do care. But as a board member, sometimes that personal care has to be set aside for the greater good. And so I want to talk about during board meetings, I'm going to give some examples of what I've seen other boards do that show that they are stepping out of their lane during a board meeting. So one example of this is asking questions that dig deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Asking questions is good. That's your job. You should be asking questions. The questions asked tonight I thought were great. But I've seen other boards, they're like, they'll ask, let's try to use discipline data. I'm trying to make something up on the spot. So the discipline data is shared for the district. Okay, so what does the discipline data look like at this particular elementary school? And what about this particular teacher's discipline data? I heard they have a ton of referrals. What are we doing about that particular teacher? That's not your job to figure that particular thing out. You can ask about something general, but it's those questions that dig that may then be outside of your role. Making individual requests of the superintendent. Having 7 bosses is stressful. I only have one, thank goodness. I can't imagine having 7. And so if we're asking, if all of you are making requests of this one person, then she can't do her job day to day because she's trying to answer to 7 different people. So making sure that we talk as a board during board meetings and we decide together what is it we'd like Dr. Lathan to do. We all vote, we all agree, and we're given that directive clearly. Listening to recommendations and voting against them. So I'm not saying, I want to give the perfect example of when this happened. It was another district in a different part of the state, and they were trying to decide the color of the track And the track coach and the principal had done all this research. They'd gone to conferences. They'd ask all of these track experts. And although the colors were purple, so I guess you could narrow down if you wanted to what district, even though the colors were purple, they said that they would rather have, it's better for kids to have like a lighter colored track than the purple track. And they had all these reasonings behind it. They shared those with the board. They talked about cost of everything. And they said, our recommendation as the professional is that we don't do the purple track, even though it's our colors, we do the lighter color track. Well, the board didn't like that, and they voted against that person. And obviously, listening to recommendations, and if you all disagree for a really, really valid reason, and you have data to support why you want to do something different, that's totally fair. But they just were like, well, we think the purple color is better, and so we're just going to go purple. And so the track coach, obviously that's very upsetting. They're the ones who are going to be out there every day with those kids. This was their recommendation. This is what they felt was best for students, and the board went against that idea. And so it really did break trust. It sounds silly, but it did. It broke trust between the board and the track coach. And that was a hard then kind of spring moving forward for them. Bringing up topics that are not on the agenda, that's pretty straightforward. And then monopolizing the discussion. I see that happen where it's just one person has to make a comment on everything, and they just kill the time of the meeting. That happens in so many different boards across the state. So what I'm going to ask you to do, and this is going to take some vulnerability, is we need to self-reflect. Because the only way to get better is to admit maybe where we've messed up and what we wish we would have done differently or what we're going to do differently in the future. Okay? So I think you guys all have paper and pen. I brought scrap paper if you need it, but you guys all have paper and something to write on or write with? Okay. All right, so I want you to write down an example of a time that you may have stepped out of your lane during a board meeting. It doesn't have to be crazy, but just you're like, oh shoot, maybe I shouldn't have asked that question, or oh dang, it was my first month on the board and I didn't realize that I just made this request of the superintendent and I shouldn't have done that. So I'm going to think of a time where maybe you stepped out of your lane during a board meeting and just jot it down. Oh yeah, I guess. Still blank. Oh, yeah. No missteps yet. Hopefully never. I know. And it's so unintentional when it happens. Like it's never on purpose or mean. It just is an accident. You care passionately about something. It happens everywhere. Super normal. Okay. I want you to think about, why did you do what you did? And again, you're reading this and you're probably like, it wasn't even mean. It wasn't even on purpose. I didn't know. It was an accident, or it's because I cared. I was passionate about this. I wanted to fix this situation. I wanted to fix it. And then I want you to think, what do you wish you would have done differently? Like now that it's happened, now that you know, you're like, dang, maybe next time I'll do this. And then I would love if people are comfortable sharing the example, why they did it, and what they wish they would have done differently. And if you're not comfortable, that's okay.
I'll share.
Great.
So particularly early in my tenure on the board, because of my passion for literacy in education, I found myself pontificating on topics, and I also found myself answering questions for the staff while they were presenting, because I have expertise and I wanted to share my expertise, but that's not my job. And they had expertise also, and they were more than capable of answering the questions for themselves.
Anybody else?
we ought to leave it in the hands of the administration at that time frame. You remember that?
Thanks. Anybody else?
I can think of at least one time for sure when I probably said too much in regard to discipline and protocol and procedures, where I was reverting back to my days in another life as principal and talking a little bit about that. And it really wasn't my place to be talking about that. I should have left that to others.
So, this may not be the answer you want to hear, but I have to go back to this slide where you said examples of boards and board members getting out of line.
So are we shifting to something else? Sorry.
Nope, it's totally on topic. You said examples of boards and board members getting out of their lane during meetings. Two examples on here. Asking questions that dig deeper and deeper. I just have to disagree with that. I believe we have the obligation to seek information to be able to answer the questions that we need for our votes. Next, listening to recommendations and voting against them. That is absurd that is on here. To say that it could be out of line for us to vote against a staff recommendation, and to say, well, maybe it's okay sometimes, but not others. According to whom? According to us individually, our vote is our vote. And it's up to us individually to decide when it is appropriate to vote against a recommendation or not. To say that it is listening to a recommendation and voting against it is getting out of their lane, I think actually coming down here and telling this board that is going to further drive a wedge between us. And I don't think that that's helpful. So to answer your question, I have voted against staff recommendations on numerous occasions. However, I don't think that's getting out of my lane. My responsibility is to the voters and the stakeholders. So if you want to clarify that, I'm all ears, or if we as a board want to touch on that, because I think it could be dangerous to leave this room to think that voting against staff recommendations is getting out of our lane.
Kelly, I'm not sure. Did you hear my example when I explained that?
Yes, you gave an example, and you said in that case, that's what I'm saying. It is not to anybody else's discretion to decide when it's appropriate or not appropriate to vote against a staff recommendation. It is up to each individual to vote the way that they decide to vote based on the information that they have.
For sure, and I'm not saying don't do that. That's not what I said.
Well, I may have voted against the track, and I may have had different reasons to vote for it, and I don't think it's any other board member's job or anybody at MSBA or anybody else to say that you can't vote against a staff recommendation. That was inappropriate to vote against a staff recommendation. I don't think that that's helpful.
Okay, so let's dig into that deeper, okay? Because I think that the intent of that slide, and I get where you're coming from, because if you're not a rubber stamp, if they bring something for you to vote on in this room, you get to vote, and you get to vote your conscience. What our concern is, and perhaps it should have been stated differently on the slide, is we do have board members that don't listen to staff recommendations, and they don't respect the time and expertise that's put into. Like, your job is to hire the professional staff to do the deep digging, okay? When I have board members that consistently refuse to listen to staff and vote against staff recommendations, it's a deeper symptom of I don't trust the staff.
It's a problem of listening, not a problem of voting. So the voting part is
That's
up
correct.
to the
That's
individual
correct.
to decide.
That's correct. That's correct.
What you're saying is, which really comes down to treating the job seriously and listening, being respectful, interacting, and giving it your all, is what you're telling me, right?
Well, not just giving it your all, but recognizing, as a governance board, which is what the most frustrating part of being on a board, is that there are many layers that are gone through before it gets to the board level. And so board members that decide, yes, I've heard from all of these experts who've also gotten, this has been vetted all the way through. I'm just going to throw that baby out with the bathwater and use my personal experiences or my recommendations. That's the concern. Okay. But I think it's good that you brought this up because I think this is part of the conversation, right? We don't just rubber stamp the staff. You are correct. We can ask questions of the staff. The concern is when we try and replace the staff, we try and do the job for the staff, or we blatantly disrespect the staff. That's when it becomes more of a problem.
That is fair, and thank you for clarifying.
Good. Do we want to go back to our little stepping stones? Sure. No, I think this is a good conversation.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because he did bring up a lot of good stuff. So I haven't had to cross the line yet, but like I said, I'm good at stepping over it, unfortunately. So on a decision to vote, I don't vote my personal conscience. I don't vote for what I think best. I need to make the decision when I vote for what is best for the school, entire school district.
Yes. And
big picture.
Big picture.
Big picture. Okay.
Data. That's why we talk a lot about data-driven decisions because it is amazing if you actually learn about this stuff, how your head tricks you. It's impossible to divorce our personal experiences from our board work, but trying the best that we can to look big picture and look overall, okay? And that's hard. The board members that I think do it very well, they have to take their personal hat off. I've had board members say, this is not what's best for my kid or my family, but this is what's best for my district, and that's why I'm voting this way. But that's a difficult skill to develop, okay? But yeah. This is all good conversations.
I had a board president tell me one time that his wife was so mad about how he voted that she slept in the other room for a week. But he was like, this is how I felt. No matter what my wife said, I had to put her opinion to the side and vote based on, how I felt. And the data that was given to us at the board meeting that she may not have been aware of. But it's hard to put that to the side. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Have either of you served on a school board?
I was just a teacher.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So how to stay in your lane during board meetings. Asking governance level questions, which I have, I'm trying to decide, it's so hard to tell how much time I have and what I want to do. So asking governance level questions, and maybe I'll just give you guys some examples of those instead of practicing it. Coming to collective agreements when making requests of the superintendent, respecting recommendations made to the board, even if you voted against them, that's okay. And then taking responsibility of yourself and of the board, making sure that you yourself are doing the job to the best of your ability and that you're holding the rest of the board to that standard as well. All right, so governance level questions. Again, you guys ask really good questions today, but I just want to give a couple examples of what's not a governance level question and how can you tweak it to make it a governance level question. Because again, you should be questioning things. That's definitely your job. I'm not telling you not to do that. So governance level questions are questions that enable the board to fulfill their role of monitoring the district without usurping the superintendent's delegated duty to manage it. They keep board members out of the weeds while definitely allowing them to maintain a strong pulse on the district, which is, again, your job. You should be doing that. So let's pretend the board agenda topic is teacher retention efforts. And so you've been shared a presentation about teacher retention efforts, or maybe you're discussing teacher retention efforts. So a question, this is an example of a question board members ask, can we have an award ceremony for teachers who have been in our district 5 or more years? We would say this is not a governance level question. I'm going to show you what the governance level question is and then see if you guys can figure out kind of what the difference is. What we would prefer you ask is, what are some incentives that we are putting in place to encourage teachers to stay in our district? Do we see the difference between the two? What's the big difference?
I think the difference is that one question is a directive for operational practices, and one is a question about incentivizing. One is the actual question. One is more of a kind of a directive of what they want versus what's available, what are we doing, and how can we incentivize more.
Exactly. And then I'll give one more example. So the board agenda topic is student reading achievement. And so some people ask something like this: shouldn't we purchase and implement the Lucy Calkins reading program because I've heard it produces good results? And so again, that's kind of like a suggestion or a request of something specific. And instead, what strategies or programs do we have in place to help increase student reading performance, and how do we know that they are working?
This question is my thorn because this is definitely, you know, in my earlier days on the board of where I would be with regards to my bringing my expertise to the table and saying, hey, we should be doing X instead of what are we doing. I would, you know, recommend things that, you know, I bring my expertise to the table and share what I know, but it doesn't mean that I have to make a recommendation that we do those kind of purchases. It's not my job.
Right. Yeah.
The second question seems more focused on the goal, what the board wants to see the goal to be.
Yes.
And then allowing the superintendent and her team to navigate how we get to that goal.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. It's focusing in on, yeah, exactly like you said. What is it that you're hoping the district will move towards? But it's not your job to figure out how that happens. That's Dr. Lathan's job.
Can I just,
either
I
one.
guess for a point of clarification, would it be fair to say that, I guess this is the way that I look at it, and then if someone disagrees, tell me. If another board member asks the red question up there, I guess I would just say, I would have done that differently, but that's your choice of how to do that. The purpose of this conversation and offering the green question is really to help us be more effective. It's not that we can't ask the red question. It's if we really want to be effective and to empower our superintendent to do her best job, learning these strategies and doing something more like the green is going to be more effective as a board. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Good job. Yeah, because that's, anyway, way to tie it together.
Yeah, I'm going to make it really real here. I'm going to ask for your help.
All right, go for it.
Several months ago, we asked the deputy superintendent, can you go back one slide? Sure. Dr. Mulford, that very thing, not about the teachers and ceremony, but we have one of the lowest three-year teacher retention rate within our region. And do we have exit interviews, and what is happening with those exit interviews? And it took several asks. We did get something in a Friday update, and it was really bare bones, but it came with no, from a governance level, you know, thinking of my role being monitor, it died. And the conversation died, because really the intent wasn't, I want to see, or we want to see the exit interviews. We had no interest in that, right? It was really about, what are the exit interviews showing? I don't really want to know what they're showing, but what are you seeing? How are you shifting and making changes based on the information that you are getting in said exit interviews? That's the question that, and I'm trying to remember who else was asking these questions. This is some months ago, guys, sorry, and before we talk. But I never got there. So tell me how to ask the question so that I can write the email tomorrow.
Well, it sounds like you would like to, if the board, I mean, the first question is that something that the board wants?
Well,
Or is that something
well,
you as an individual
it came up at the board meeting, and Dr. Mulford, who is no longer here, so I don't want to speak for him, said that we are working on this and we're going to get something to the board. And I thought, I don't know what that something is, but hopefully the something is not just here's the information, but sort of this is what we're doing, like this is what we're thinking. Kind of like tonight, right? I'd been waiting for the presentation on PBIS and curriculum. It's like, wow, this is great. Not only are you telling me what it is, but how it helps so I can get the big picture, right? right? Because don't make me pull it out. It's like I'm pulling teeth. I'm just going to pull it out. You just tell me, and then it just makes the process so much easier. So that never went anywhere.
Okay, and
so I just let it go. Like I let so many things go.
So it's one thing if we have an administrator saying, yes, I'm bringing this to the board, okay? And then it's a matter of let's call the superintendent and the board president, say, hey, somebody said the board was gonna hear this. Would you please put that on the agenda? So that we can have a designated time to hear if that's what the administrator promised the board, okay? So it's not so much answering your question as much as following up with, we had an administrator tell us that they were going to bring this information. Could you please have this information? But if it's a matter of you as an individual would like to have that information.
No, it's not.
Not you as an individual. Okay. So then the question
What am I
is.
going to do with it as an individual?
Well, exactly.
I don't even
exactly.
want to know. I don't even want to be burdened with that information.
But this is one of those difficult things, like how do you as a board decide what's going to be talked about in a board meeting? You know, well, you can request for items to be put on the agenda. You approve an agenda, and the point of that is, yes, I agree, we need to hear about all of this stuff. But how does this group as a whole decide what information, and is it relevant, and and all of that kind of stuff, with the same kind of grace and mercy with the administrative staff, understanding that they've got lots of other things to do. So if it's one thing is if an administrator said, yes, we're going to bring that to the board, then it can just be a simple follow-up, like, when's that coming? If it is, no, I think that we need to discuss this, then sometimes that's a motion in the vote of the board to say, I make a motion that we have a presentation on our retention rates and steps that are being taken to address the retention rates so that you're better understood. Does that make sense?
No, when do you make a motion? I guess I'm not following you. There isn't a time in the board meeting that's, okay, does anybody want to make a motion? Because, we've been told that you do not alter the agenda unless it's like a catastrophe, like there's a tornado and a building roof blows off and you got to alter the agenda.
Okay, so
to buy a new roof.
The
right?
first recommendation I always have is go to the superintendent and the president and say, I think this would be a good agenda item. Is this coming up? Okay, because retention rates are actually usually what districts talk about in the summer. Okay, but I have had some folks at the end of a board meeting make a motion to have on the agenda for the next board meeting or in a future board meeting. I would like to hear more about X, Y, and Z. Okay, and then the board as a whole decides whether or not they want to hear about X, Y, and Z.
So at the end of a board meeting, you mean during
a regular board meeting?
Board comments or before?
It could be in board comments.
You could also, our procedure has been, if you want an item added to the agenda, to send an email to the president.
I'm very
and vice
well
president.
aware of that.
So that would be another way to get it on the agenda for discussion. And then once it's on the agenda for a discussion, you could make a motion for what the board as a whole wanted.
Yeah.
Again, so it would be fair to say I feel like it's my ability to ask questions, and Dr. Lathan has asked that we direct those to her and not to other staff members, and my interest is in having a working, functional relationship. So I ask questions, I ask to Dr. Lathan. She also, but what's not in here is she's not obligated to answer my questions. So she could just say no or just not answer it. Now, she probably doesn't want to do that because she also wants to maintain a good working relationship, right? That's the nature of all of this. Like, we each get 1/7 vote on her contract, once a year, right? So she wants to make us happy. She wants to work with us. Like, that's how this is all set up. That's how it works. So it just seems pretty simple to me that we try to do the green questions to the best of our ability. That's us trying to do the best job we can. We be respectful, and we also understand that we don't want to overburden Dr. Lathan, and if she can't get to it or doesn't want to, she can say no, but she hasn't I mean, she's developed a pretty good track record, I think, of answering my questions. So I don't feel like that's a problem. But if there is a question that you keep asking that you're not getting an answer to, then I guess at that point, you're going to have to get a total of 4 board members to say, we all demand collectively the answer to this question because it wasn't given. Is that fair?
Correct. And the point of the red questions or the green question, sure, you can ask the red questions. I had a school board that, and mind you, it was small, but they wouldn't let the superintendent open the mail. They sent somebody in every day to open the mail, okay? So can you say, I know exactly, you guys say, so the poster child of dysfunction and not progressive, not moving the needle, not, that was a perfect and crazy example, and yet a true one of you could do that if you wanted to, complete dysfunction, okay? Like, if I was the superintendent, I'd just quit, okay? And so you're correct. This is all based on how can we be as functional as possible? How can we be as efficient as possible? How can we as 7 people kind of walk together? How can I get my questions answered, but also be respectful of the fact that, Dr. Latham has 7 people asking her questions? And how do we ultimately, and then you go on to your CSIP. That's the point. That's why the state requires that, is they're trying to get everybody to walk together in a certain path. And it might not be straight. It might be a little bit wobbly, but yes. So the skill part, the most difficult part, is that there's no legislator, there's no school board police, there's nobody that, Zeus isn't going to throw us a lightning bolt if you ask a red question. But if you're all asking red questions, then it's that much more difficult to move, particularly in a district this size. You have a lot of very qualified, I don't know how you felt about the presentation tonight, but I thought it was phenomenal, okay? And I've been to a lot of school presentations. I thought it was phenomenal. And it was an example of your staff showing off their expertise and the depth of thought that has gone into a lot of these things. And so the good news is you guys you don't have to worry about that. Now we need to just work as a governance board to turn the ship or move the ship. I don't even know if you're having to turn it, just move it. Green questions help. And quite honestly, y'all aren't paid. I don't know if you noticed that. So, you're paying people. Have them do their job.
Anything else? Okay.
And, I feel like I should clarify for the record, I'm not interested in that because that eventually got answered by way of many means. I wanted to clarify that. No, but yeah, it just took longer and it could have been handled better from both sides. Huh?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'll double your salary.
Okay, we do only have 4 minutes left, and so I kind of want to get back to this question of unity. So I'm going to skip.
I think we have that on here.
Skip. Okay. So we talked about, Susan talked a ton about collective authority. You all said that you wanted to work together. You all said that you wanted to unite. I think even you said, like, this is a new dawn, a new board, like this is our chance to start anew. And so, yeah, also that, yeah. I loved second semester as a teacher. Clean slate. So I want to hear from you all, and I want you to share with the team, because usually I would take these, I'd bring them back, I'd type them up, and I'd send them to you, so you still have them. But I think it's really important for you to share out loud with your board what you specifically are going to start to do as a board member to help unify this board. So I'm going to give you a second to think about it, and then we'll all share. Okay, So 7 people have to share, and we won't go in any particular order. Would someone like to volunteer to go first? And we'll just kind of work our way around. Great.
I'm trying to get out of here. So, I have learned that it is not helpful to go back and forth. So I can disagree, and then I'm not going to keep going back and forth anymore. Just I disagree, and I told you why, and there's no reason for me to rebuttal. And I think that's something that I've learned, and I'm learning to do better. There's no reason to continue to go back and forth. And I think it may help to unify the board if I give my dissenting opinion, my opposing opinion, my differing opinion, and then walk away.
I think that's great. Thank you. Who's next?
I'll go next.
Okay.
I will do a better job at respecting other people's opinions if they're not like my own, and trying to do a better job at seeing where individuals are coming from when it's not where I'm coming from. And also be more open to criticism. If anybody has any suggestions on how to run the board better or do something different, I am all ears. And I will go into it with an open mind.
Thank you. 2 down, 5 to go.
I'll go. I learned an important lesson tonight in regard to, I know what my pattern is when I look at the updates from Dr. Lathan. We get them on Friday afternoon. I'll take a quick glance. I'll usually look at it more deeply on Saturday morning, but then really Sunday afternoon is where I give it more thought. And so, as I said earlier, I have to take responsibility for not notifying people that that's not their pattern, because I do it Sunday night, so it had changed. I should have sent an email and said, hey, make sure you notice that the agenda changed, the PowerPoint changed, whatever it is. So I think, because I think that that almost derailed this meeting at the beginning, and I would have hated that.
Thank you.
I got order figured out. I'd like to kind of explain what I feel like my role is on the board. I truly understand that 50% of all the students will fall in the bottom 50% of academic success. And so I am the activities program, the athletic programs, the teams, the whatever, that I believe is very important to get the kids to school. I can move the percentile if I can get them to school. And I truly believe that when you fall in the bottom 50%, you can be incredibly successful in life. Because I then want to go back to how important I feel that the behavior and the work ethic that can be taught. So I know that not everyone knows me, but maybe that explains where I come from. And I really believe that the years that I coached, that I really do believe in voting for, believing in, and trying to accomplish the greater good goal. You know, I had to sit my own kid out. She wasn't a starter. And it wasn't the greater good.
Thanks. Just keep going this way, I guess. Yeah.
I'll just say that I think my way would be to go back and watch the board meetings and see how people interact and see if I'm instrumental in helping facilitate what our goals and objectives would be.
Okay. Do you want to go back?
So I'm all about data and patterns. And what I've learned today is that the more dialogue and communication we have, the better we do. And I don't mean just amongst the board, but in the board room. So everything that I heard from the staff was so incredible. And it has put my mind to rest on so many things that I had previously felt uncomfortable about because I didn't have enough information. So with that preamble, I am going to try to work with board leadership to come up with ways, and just kind of hear me out because I'm thinking on the fly here, because I didn't know we were going to ask this question.
I'm full of surprises.
What can we do to further dialogue and communication? What can we do to do more of that? And so, and I'm going to throw something out there that may be a little bit controversial, but try to find and focus on a process that distinguishes, and I think this is a key thing for this board, between actionable items and discussion items, and find a path towards being able to put things on the agenda that are purely discussion items. And maybe those have different rules, like Robert's rules. It's not like it's different. It's like a whole different basket to give the board an opportunity to have informal discussions. And it could be something as getting to know each other, not like personally getting to know each other, but getting to know about each other through these discussions, so that when we are coming together on the action items, that we can understand the difference between the red and the green. That's on how we can be more effective. And I think practicing, I also believe in practicing. Practicing makes us better. It's not going to make us perfect, it's going to make us better. So I'm going to try to focus on finding a process to enhance dialogue and communication. And this is something that I have worked on. I had asked board leadership to add something to the agenda. And I think I did a pretty good job when I didn't get it on the agenda and it was postponed, because there's only so many months that you serve in a year. And the last 2 board meetings we had, or 3 board meetings, were like an hour long. One was like an hour and a half. One was less than an hour. So we by no means have protracted board meetings, right? This isn't 2 years ago. So I'm trying to be respectful and always, instead of just letting matters drop, communicate back that I was disappointed that this didn't make it on the agenda, considering we had really nothing on the agenda. So I'm going to make an effort to add something to the agenda, not just random. Like, we're not going to talk about the color of your water bottle there, but things that I know plague the board, such as those 4 items, right? Not as an actionable item, but just, and there's many things that have come through this board. In the comment period, people are popping off with various comments. Let's not do that. Let's actually ask for it to be an agenda item and find a path that it's not an action item. Because once it becomes an action item, you're asking the district to do work. I don't want to burden the district, to burden the personnel. This is an opportunity for us to have like mini retreats, I guess, many opportunities, and then let in those 10, 15-minute discussion, I'm just throwing a number, I'm not actually, see what bubbles to the surface from a governance standpoint. So that's what I'm going to try to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so you watched the reorganization meeting, and that's what this came from, this idea of unity, right? Yeah. The theme, right? Just wanted to clarify on that. Unity to me doesn't look like 7-0 votes all the time. I think us having discussions is healthy. I think us having votes that are not 7-0 is healthy. There's something wrong if it's not happening now and again. That's not saying that we just need to vote differently to stir it up, but something's not working right if we're all voting 7-0. So I'm not sure how you interpreted that meeting, but the idea of unity to me, and why it was said out of my mouth so much from that meeting, had to do with some members of the board kind of having a seat at the table in the board officers' meetings, to be a part of those conversations, because those conversations and the setting of the agenda has so much to do with the function of this board. So everything that played out in my mind that night and the idea of unity was around, let's throw as many options at the wall as we can so that we can come to some sort of agreement, so that we didn't feel like we were alienating some members and promoting the voices of other members. And then the other piece had to do with comments that are meant to point fingers at other board members. From any board member to another board member is not productive. That was my whole thought around the unity thing. So what can I do about it? It is what it is. So what can I do moving forward? Judy and I have been able to meet a lot one-on-one over the last year, and I'll continue to do that. I really enjoy those. It's also extra helpful for me just because she's been an educator for so long. So we have two very different You did that last time just for this. So us having two different perspectives makes for really good conversations, and I will continue to commit to that. And I could probably do better with that. Those one-on-ones I do get a lot out of. I think that's maybe what we attempted to accomplish with the little roundtable thing we did here first, but I think it's probably better accomplished for me in a one-on-one setting. And I would like to do more of those. I've done those with most board members. I need to get to know Susan. I'd like to do that with you. And I'd like to make a better attempt, Danielle, to do that with you. And the rest of the board members. Sharita, we've done that before, but we're due. So I would love to buy into our board leadership, give them an opportunity. And I think the best way to do that is to build those relationships and have those conversations.
Awesome. And she wants you to pay. All right. Well, I think this was really helpful. I appreciate you all being vulnerable. I know that was, yeah. You shared, yep. Yeah, sorry. It's 6:40. We're 10 over. Yeah, no, but thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Sorry about the miscommunication, but I think it all turned out okay. So have a good night. Yeah. Carefully. Thank you. We will.
Technically speaking, we need to adjourn the meeting. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second, okay. Board Member McCoskey?
Aye.
Board Member Provance? Chair votes aye, and we are adjourned. Thank you.